I don't know if the rest of you checked your emails this morning. There's on item number 10, there's a notice of a previous decision when the application was refused, and the decision that came in our item materials yesterday was not for the correct address. So it's included. Adam sent it this morning, early this morning, I believe.
So Tiffany, this is the one. This is the latest one. It looks right.
I didn't see it. I had my email open, but maybe sent to other email.
So it's a decision from 2019 for 121 Durant Avenue.
121, okay.
And it was refused.
Oh, now I got it. Yeah, now I see it. Yeah.
Okay. All
Okay.
right.
Thank you.
Thanks for catching that, Carl.
Yeah,
My pleasure.
I'm going to start now, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. Good morning. During the declared emergency, Committee of Adjustment virtual public hearings are being conducted by electronic means through WebEx, an online digital platform, and streamed on the Toronto City Planning YouTube channel. These measures are necessary to comply with physical distancing requirements and in-person attendance limitations. This will be a virtual public hearing, and participants who have registered in advance will be able to make their presentations to the committee using WebEx, an online event that is being moderated by city staff. Anyone wishing to view the hearing may do so by watching on YouTube. Participants who have registered in advance will be connecting either by their computer, a phone or tablet app, or by telephone. All participants will automatically be muted on entry. When your item is called, each participant will be unmuted by the moderator, one person at a time. Only the committee members will be participating by video. Having trouble hearing me?
Yes.
Any registered participants will be participating by audio only. We ask you also mute your devices until you are called on to speak. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. We acknowledge the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. In accordance with sections 45 and 53 of the Planning Act as amended, this meeting of the Committee of Adjustment of the City of Toronto is called to order. The committee considers applications for variances from the provisions of the zoning that applies to property, permission to extend or alter lawful non-conforming uses, and consent to sever property to create new lots. Anyone in attendance today who wants to receive a copy of the decision of the committee on an application must submit a written request for a decision by email. Please ensure you include your name, address, and email address, because Committee of Adjustment and the TLAB will be sending notifications and appeal updates by email. If you don't agree with our decision, it can be appealed to the Toronto Local Appeal Body, TLAB, or in some limited circumstances to the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, LPAT. Appeal instructions are set out at the bottom of the decision of the committee. At the hearing today, I will call each item in the order listed on the agenda. Where an application is uncontested, the agent or applicant may proceed with their presentation if desired. When the committee does not require a presentation, applicants are to advise the chair should they wish to speak to the committee. The committee may ask questions and/or take the matter into committee for a decision. Each speaker, including the applicant agent, will be given a maximum of 5 minutes to address the committee. I will comment when you are reaching the 5 minutes. When addressing the committee, please clearly state your name and address. Please remember to confine your remarks to the matters outlined in the application. The The applicant or agent will proceed first and will make a presentation to the committee of the application. Please note, the committee may not entertain revisions to proposals at the hearing today. The committee may decide to defer the application if substantially revised to ensure the revised application is accurate and that all those entitled to notice of the application are informed of the changes. Then individuals, either in support or opposed to the application, will be invited to speak. Committee members may ask questions of each speaker. When all speakers are finished, the applicant agent has an opportunity to rebut those issues that were raised by the speakers. This will mark the end of discussion. The application will then be taken into committee for a decision. Madam Deputy Secretary Treasurer, I want to confirm the minutes of the last meeting. We require a motion to adopt the minutes. Do I have a motion, panel? Carl?
So
Seconder?
moved, Mr. Chairman.
Yep. Seconder? Yim? Peter? Thank you. All in favor of confirmation of the minutes? Minutes are confirmed. Are there any declarations of interest of the panel or staff for items in the 9:30 time slot?
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, I have a conflict on number 7, potential conflict on number 7, 174 Durant. I own property just around the corner.
Are you within the, did you receive notification?
No, I didn't, but it's still very close.
Well, but I don't think you have to recuse yourself if you haven't received the notice.
Okay.
It may not be close enough.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Madam Deputy Secretary Treasurer, are there any deferral requests?
None that I'm aware of.
Okay. Are there any files to be closed?
Not today.
Okay. So let us now proceed to deal with the first item, 14 Rosemary Lane. The purpose of this application is to construct a 3-story detached dwelling with a rear basement, integral garage, and a rear ground floor deck. On this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, email correspondence from planning and parking, transportation services, and correspondence in opposition from 14 Dewborn Avenue. Mr. Tanner, are you online?
Good day, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Thank you so much.
Can we have your name and your address, sir?
This is Joel Tanner with the Office of Simple Design Studio, 15 Colburn Street, Hamilton, Ontario.
Okay. So can you tell us what this is about?
Most definitely. So this application is a single-family dwelling, obviously with the listed variants at hand. We did have a pretty good circulation. The current owners of the subject property made their rounds throughout the street just to have some discussions with some neighbors. We have signed letters in support of the application, both at 11 as well as 15 Rosemary. We have 18 Dewborn, who has also signed. The direct neighbors at 12 and 16, we have a verbal consent, but nothing in writing. And obviously, as you'd mentioned, the one neighbor that is contesting the application at 14 Dewborn, they are on the southern corner, tip corner of the subject property at hand. We do have planning staff support. We do feel that the application is minor in nature, that being driven by the fact that we are designing a modern dwelling. Modern dwellings, as we all know, are subject to deviated regulations from what a sloped roof application construction methodology would entail. That is the real driver in our application for the height deviation. Obviously, when you look at the numbers from 7.2 to 11.26, that's a fairly substantial deviation. But what I do want to reinforce and mention is that the peak permitted allowable is 11 meters. So we are seeking 0.26 meters above and beyond what the peak permitted allowances are. I do also want to note that we've designed the proposed new 3-story structure to be in keeping with the existing peak roof line of the existing structure on said property. So we've taken that into consideration so that we are in keeping with the stature and magnitude of dwellings on the streetscape that exists today. Also do want to note that within a peaked roof designed home, you are allowed a 3-story. It is when you get into a flat roof modern design concept where we do have to deviate from said bylaw because we are only allowed 2. I just want to touch on one last thing within the list of variances with regards to the overall dwelling depth. I do want to note that the dwelling depth is measured depending on the bylaw that we're studying. It is the physical foundational structure of the build, or in the secondary bylaw, it is also including roof overhangs. So I do want to mention that the proposed dwelling, within 569-2013 bylaw, we are allowed 19 meters. The house, as it is proposed, is 22.7, which is a 3.71 meter deviation. The rest of that deviation is coming into play with the rear balcony. So I just want to touch on that it's very important to us that we've introduced the privacy for those direct neighbors, which is driving those deviations.
Okay. Any questions, panel? Okay, can we move on to Mr. Gold, Mr. or Mrs. Gold? Hello, Mr. Gold?
Hi, Mr. or Mrs. Gold, can you hear us? You may need to maybe be closer to the mic.
Hello?
Hello?
You hear me now?
Not really.
Hello?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay.
But you got an echo.
If you're
I'm
watching
getting away.
YouTube in the background, you have to turn it off.
Okay, so is there still an echo?
No, you seem to be okay now. Okay, could we have your name and your address, please?
Yeah, my name is Lauren Gold, and I'm at 14 Dewborn Avenue.
Okay, can we have your comments, please?
Okay, well, of the 13 variances, I'm only asking you to change 2, the height and the depth. Taking away 1/2 of the backyard is major. They want to go to 13 meters from our back, not 24. It's also much higher than it's supposed to be. I don't want someone looking down from a balcony that close to our backyard that makes me feel like I'm looking at an apartment building. I think that's what the zoning laws were exactly set up for, situations like this. So I feel the variance isn't minor. I don't think the proposal is desirable, definitely not to me. I think the zoning code is not maintained and the purpose of the official plan is not maintained. So not one of the 4 considerations are really met. And those are my concerns, and that's what I thought I'd let you know.
All right, could you point us to the particular variances that you're talking about?
The height? Okay, yeah, I will. Let me just get it. I've never done this before. Number 2, the height.
right?
My major one is the depth. It's 1.5 times longer than it's supposed to be. I don't call that minor.
Which,
They're taking exactly half of what's supposed to be the backyard away.
all right,
So I don't know
Mr.
what the
Gold,
fellow before me said.
all right, Mr. Gold, which variance is that?
That variance would be number,
7?
oh wait. Let me get the variances. I have to look them up. Chapter 11. I'm just looking for it.
7 and 10 is a depth and a length.
Yeah, it's the depth and the length that are my big concern.
All right, so the depth
The
is at,
maximum okay.
depth is at
Yeah.
variance number 7. Is that the one you're concerned about? 28.45
That's the one I'm
meters?
very concerned about.
Okay.
Yes.
Is there another one with respect to length? Yes, length is
Well, there
number
were 2,
10.
but I just mentioned one.
Yeah, number 10, 29.78.
Yes, it's number 7 at 28.45. Yeah, that's 50% more than what's allowed. And number 10, the
Okay,
building length.
all right. All right, do you have any other concerns, Mr. Gold?
I would accept everything. I just think it's way too long and way too high. I don't want a big building completely covering the backyard right beside me.
Okay, Mr. Gold.
I think it's not, just to say the last thing, I don't think those 2 proposals are anywhere near minor, and I'm really concerned.
All right.
It's half the backyard. It's a few feet or a few meters, maybe, but not half the backyard, not 13 meters longer, and not that much higher.
Thank you, Mr. Gold. Mr. Tanner?
Yes, thanks, Committee. So just in terms of Mr. Gould's concerns, we did send in some late documentation this morning to BAVIC, which I apologize that it was a tardy item. Mr. Gould has been very accommodating and did allow our owners to march into the rear yard of Mr. Lawrence property last night and this morning to take a few photos. We did provide that documentation as a late submission. We do feel that the existing vegetation within Mr. Lawrence property, as well as our client's property, does allow the privacy impact that every neighbor so desires. We don't feel that it's as impactful for Mr. Lorne as it is the direct neighbors at 12 and 16 Rosemary. In discussions with building depth and building height with the neighboring community, we do feel that, again, I just want to reinforce that the allowable height is 11 meters within the area. And again, because we've designed a flat roof structure, not a slope roof structure, we are within tolerances of where that existing streetscape does sit. I know that Mr. Lorne also mentioned privacy concerns with rear balconies. We can't unfortunately control the gradiating pattern of the landscape on this property, and it unfortunately drives a rear yard walkout condition, which then forces your main living space to be elevated above grade. The owners are going to be installing a pool in the rear yard at some point, or swim spa, which really drives the entertainment to be down in the yard space as opposed to up on the balcony zone. And again, just reinforcing that the overall building depth that's not a fully conclusive number that we should be looking at, just simply because it is measured from that rear balcony structure to the front wall structure. So it's not technically overall structural depth of the overall building envelope. So we do feel that, with discussions with the direct neighbors, which are, obviously more severely impacted, that they're in favor of it, just based on the proposal being driven towards a privacy for all, so privacy for 12 and privacy for 16, as well as our clients at 14.
Okay, so you said that the vegetation covers up Mr. Gould's view and therefore his difficulties with the height and the depth would be mitigated by the vegetation?
Substantially mitigated, that's correct, yeah.
What about in the winter time?
Yeah, in the winter, I mean, if we want to look at additional plantings in 14 Rosemary in order to increase, increase privacy, we can definitely do so and discuss that with Mr. Lauren.
Yeah. Okay. Panel, do you have any questions? Yes, Yim? You're muted, Yim.
Yes, now I mute myself. Yes, I do have questions. Yesterday when I look at the application, the two questions, actually my question is the height. You have explained why you have to exceed the bylaw in height because of the design of a box building. But you haven't actually given reason why the length and the depth are so much, such a big increase. And I'd like you to speak to that, please.
Mr. Tanner?
Sorry, I was just waiting to come off mute there. Yeah, no, most definitely, I'm more than happy to. So the family lives on the street currently on a different home, and they're fairly large family and large extended family, and that's really what's driving the magnitude and scope of this project in terms of number of bedrooms and number of bathrooms and overall living space. One thing that we've also introduced into the overall architectural schematic is an interior courtyard. So there's a physical projection on the south side of the property, which faces, that would be 12 Rosemary. So that interior courtyard grew the overall depth of the building ever so slightly. That interior courtyard is 2.74 meters. And that was done on purpose to infiltrate the middle of the home with natural light. So it's a combination of the goal of the overall square footage due to the size of the family and the number of children living in the home on a full-time basis, as well as that architectural detail being introduced into that courtyard zone, which is deviated that overall depth by about 2.75 meters. Again, just to increase livability and overall usability of the home due to the fire protection regulations at hand. When you have a building in close proximity to a side yard, you're limited on windows. And so what we do is by introducing that courtyard detail, it mitigates the overall fire protection issue of that south side wall out to the neighbor. But in turn obviously grows that dwelling depth ever so slightly. Again, in addition to the overall measurement being inclusive of that covered balcony. So again, that covered balcony projection is also being included in that depth, and that is a driver, again, based on the fact that it is a walkout basement condition, not a conventional flat elevation profile lot that we are currently developing.
One thing that
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead, yeah.
I'm a bit confused when you say that it will, because of the internal courtyard, it increased the length by a little bit, at 2.7. But when you look at the variances, number 7 and number 10 is increased by almost 50 meters, like 12. If maybe I'm wrong, it's 12.78 meters. Where is number 10? Let's say, and there is number 7. You increase it by another 10, almost 10 meters, almost 10 meters, 9.45. And I thought that is a big increase, not small.
Yeah. So the overall dwelling depth, so item number 7, the permitted depth is 19. We're sitting at 28.45. The actual physical structure of the house is sitting at around 22.7. And then when you include the measurement of the rear yard balcony, if you take the rear yard balcony of 3.66 out of the equation, that brings us down closer to about 25 meters or so, shy of 25 meters in terms of that overall building depth. And then that 2.7 meter courtyard, again, would bring it down to closer to that 22 meter. So it's a bit of a culmination of all elements of the equation. And that's obviously directly linked to item number item number 10. And again, item number 10, the calculation methodology of 569-2013 in terms of the building length, that is inclusive of roof overhang structures. In a modern dwelling, we tend to design with a larger roof canopy in order to increase the overall architectural aesthetic of the home. And so that is what's driving that overall building length measurement, is those the roof overhangs in combination with the balcony being covered.
Okay, one
And
thing
then,
that-
yeah, one final item is that there's we have a front feature wall. So it's an architectural feature wall that you're, if you look at the cover page, there's it's a 6 or 7 foot tall architectural concrete feature wall. And that, you're seeing it just in front of the window wall. So that tall, substantial concrete mass just in front of the front entry window wall. That's actually where there's a 3 meter measurement there. And that's what's also being included in that combination of overall length of the building. And so that's what's creating those tolerances, is the 3 meter at the front, the 3.66 balcony at the rear, and the 2.75 courtyard in the middle.
So one thing that hasn't been mentioned yet, Mr. Tanner, is how does this modern house fit in with the character of the street? I did a Google Street View, and there's no house that looks like this on that street.
So there's a house currently finishing construction on the opposite side of the street, kitty corner to us, and it is a very, very clean line modern home that's been under construction for probably the last 3 years or so. If I'm not mistaken, it is number 9.
Yeah, I saw that construction. I have no idea what that house will look like.
Yeah, very, very, very similar in nature and stature and massing to our building. Very clean line, modern. So again, I guess we're not here to necessarily examine architectural styling. We're here to examine the variances. And we do feel that, whether it's a flat roof structure or a slope roof structure, that slope roof structure is allowed to go up to 11 meters. We're sitting just over that 11.26. So again, in terms of modern design aesthetic, it's happening all over the city. It's happening on this street in particular. We feel it's in accordance with what's happening on the streetscape.
Well, one house doesn't make it in accordance with the streetscape. All right, anyways, any panel, Carl?
Could we look at side elevation 001?
Sorry, side elevation 001?
001, that's how it's labeled on the drawings that were given
Yep.
to us.
Yep, so that would be the northerly side. Yep.
Okay, you've been referring to the balcony as if it's a small appendage, but am I correct that rectilinear space with the window in it, that's the balcony that you're referring to? So to Mr. Long's point, or Mr. Gold's point, I should say, it is a substantial building. It's not just a balcony.
Yeah.
So I'm correct. That's what you're referring to as the balcony, right?
Correct. Yeah. So that projection of 4.585, the 0.457, and the 0.527, that in combination is the northerly side dimensions of that balcony structure. And that's a wing wall that we've introduced into the elevation in order to introduce privacy for the direct neighbors. Again, driven off of that rear yard walkout balcony detail. So we've got, in our honest opinion, there is some pretty clean step back massing, which you're seeing from floor to floor to floor to floor in order to gradiate that height. We're not looking to build a straight 3 or 4 story box. We've introduced some pretty strong architectural linear elements into the equation, and we've stepped back the building profile both on the front elevation and the rear elevation of the home to mitigate the impact on the overall streetscape as much as possible based on the magnitude of the development.
Okay, thank you.
All right, panel, any further questions? Okay, we can now go into committee. Any comments? Yes, Carl. Carl?
Mr. Chairman, I think in isolation, this is a very handsome building. It's extremely, as the applicant has said, it's extremely clean, and I think it's quite engaging. My problem is with it in this particular location, which is what we are charged with looking at. And does it in fact enhance the location, or does it create problems for the neighbors or the neighborhood? I, like my colleague, I have trouble with the depth. I don't see that there's a justification for this depth. It's a substantial variance, and when there is a variance of such substantial nature, I think the applicant needs to have a better reason why unique conditions dictated that variance, and how the variance doesn't in fact create liability for neighbors or the neighborhood. And I didn't hear that argument. I will agree with him about height, the fact that it is physically the same height as the top of the pitch of a pitched roof is admirable, although one might question whether or not that is the reason why pitched roofs are in fact desirable in certain locations. They visually don't look as high. So I think Mr. Gold's brought to our attention some legitimate concerns. I will be unable to support the application, particularly because of the depth, notwithstanding the fact that in isolation, I think it's quite a handsome building.
Yes, Yim?
Yes, I just want to add to what Carl just said. I do appreciate. I think it's a very handsome building, and I think that you will bring in the style of the design to justify the height, which I agree to. But I do not think you can also bring in the same argument to justify the length and the depth, because it's actually work against you. In my opinion, because of the gradation of the grade. To your next door neighbor is exactly what will exaggerate the massing of this building by using this style. I think I'm not talking about architectural expression. I'm talking about massing. It's just a direct increase to the neighbor. I just wish that it's a little bit more sensitive to the next door neighbor by stepping back or eliminate some of these overhang or walk out. That I can support. As is currently, I think the depth is a major problem for me.
Yeah. Peter?
I just a couple points. I'm agreeing with Carl and Yim. I think they've made good points. The depth and the length are my issue, and I think that the applicant talked about the balcony in the back, and Carl raised this, but it doesn't present as a balcony. It presents as part of the actual structure of the building. I think that's a missed opportunity, and that could have been sculpted in a slightly different way. But I think the length and depth are also exacerbated a bit because of the sloped nature of the lot. They stand out, and I think the impact on the immediate neighbors and further adjacent neighbors are too much, so I can't support this.
Yeah. Nimrod, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I would agree with all of those comments.
Yep, so would I. All right, do we have a motion? Carl?
Mr. Chairman, because I don't believe that the application is responding to the context appropriately, I bring forward a motion that the application be refused.
We have a seconder, Peter. All in favor? Thank you. Your application is refused, sir. Number 2, number 9, Beaconsfield. Purpose of this application, keep losing is to construct a south side 1-story detached garage to the south of the 2.5-story semi-detached dwelling. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant. correspondence from traffic, transportation, and a report from planning and urban forestry. Mr. Kim?
Hi, my name is Rock Kim.
Yes.
I'm the on behalf of the owners I'm the applicant. Actually, we already sent the email that the owner doesn't want to go forward for this committee, so we want to drop it up.
Are you asking for deferral, or you're asking to withdraw your application?
Withdraw our application. Yes.
Withdraw. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. So we have some opposition. I just want to speak. Ms. Frankel?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Did you hear Mr. Kim say that the owners want to withdraw their application?
No, I didn't hear that.
Okay, well,
Was that just said just now?
Pardon?
When was that said?
Just now.
So they're withdrawing their application for the variance, right?
They're withdrawing their application, yes, for...
Well, I'm in favor of that withdrawal. I thought the application was misconsidered. I thought it was intrusive in architecturally and conceptually. So I think it's wise to withdraw it.
All right, thank you, Ms. Frankel. I don't want to discuss the
Can we
merits.
just get her address for the record?
My address is 1088 Queen Street West, corner Dover Court.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Panel, do we have a motion with respect to withdrawal? Yes, Nimrod?
Yeah, I'd move approval of the request to withdraw the application.
All right, a seconder?
And do we have to close the file on that then?
Yeah, the motion will be to close the file.
Okay.
Peter, second. All right, all in favor of the withdrawal of the application and closing the file? All right, you have your request, Mr. Kim. The application is, the withdrawal is approved and the file is now closed. Thank you very much. Number 3. .45 Oaklands Avenue. The purpose of this application is to alter the first floor lengths within the semi-detached dwellings currently being constructed on Block 2 to be municipally known as 353 and 355 Avenue Road upon condominium registration. And we have with this application material submitted by the applicant, Mr. Bronskill. Are you here?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, sir.
So perhaps you could just give us a very, very brief explanation with respect to this.
I can, sir. This is a project on Avenue Road at Oaklands Avenue and Farnham Avenue, if you know where it is, near De La Salle School. It's actually the subject of an approved site-specific zoning bylaw amendment for different blocks of what are townhouses, 2 semi-detached buildings, and then a retained detached heritage building that is being conserved. Through that process and in finalizing the bylaw, one of the blocks, we've realized that the site-specific zoning bylaw does not contain a requisite exemption from one provision of zoning bylaw 569/2013, and this variance application is intended to rectify that. The one provision for this committee is the height of the first floors above established grade, only for the semi-detached dwellings that are on Block 2 of the development. And the relief is required to ensure that the first floors of these semi-detached dwellings are actually located above the elevation grade of the adjacent sidewalk on Avenue Road. That's how the proposal was frankly put forward through the site-specific zoning bylaw amendment, so there's no actual change to the built form that was approved through a settlement with City Council and ultimately by the tribunal. It's that this provision in 569/2013, for whatever reason at the time, was not caught in the site-specific bylaw. Without this provision, in my respectful submissions, there would be potential issues such as stormwater management if the first floors of the buildings were actually below the elevation grade of the adjacent sidewalk. I just think what's important for the committee is this is not a case of construction occurring or desire to occur in a manner that wasn't in accordance with as previously approved. It's an error in the actual site-specific bylaw itself that we are correcting through this variance process. So in short, the semi-detached dwellings as proposed, approved, and ultimately constructed are the same. It's just that this variance was not previously accounted for in the site-specific zoning. I'm happy to answer any questions of clarification that the committee may have.
Panel, any questions? All right, thank you. We'll go into committee now. We have a Carl?
Mr. Chairman, I think this is a very straightforward application, and as Mr. Bronskill so clearly indicated, it appears that it's very much a technical amendment. Clearly, it makes sense to have the living quarters above the grade of the sidewalk. That was intended from the original design. It was intended as well when the draft specific bylaw was created, and it was just missed. And so I have no difficulty at all in supporting this application without conditions, and I would so move.
All right, do we have a seconder? Yim, all in favor? You have your approval, sir. Thank you. Number 4, 166 Neville Park Boulevard. The purpose of the application is to construct a 4-story detached house with an integral garage and front porch. I need 2 mics. Oh, this one isn't so good? Oh, okay. All right, and with this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, email correspondence from Urban Forestry, and Transportation Services, a report from the Conservation Authority and Urban Forestry, opposition from 153 and 161 Neville Park Boulevard. Mr. Liebrick?
Good morning, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Excellent, good morning, committee. The application before you is for the removal of an existing 2-story home over an integral garage at grade to make way for the new proposed home. The geography of Neville Park is unique because when you travel north from Queen Street, you're backed by reverse ravine lots on both sides. So one experiences a myriad of conditions. You start moving up the street and you'll see house entrances located 3 stories above the street. On the other side of the street, you might see a 2-story house located a story above the street because of the geography. And the essential design strategy for this proposal is a 2-story base home with a setback 3rd story over the garage level, similar to what's there today. The strategy is thought to be in line with many examples of recent developments on the street. In particular, the house immediately to the north that exists there today. The street front of the house is located midway between the house to the south and the north. So it's been relocated, moved a little bit further. You can see from the site plan, moved a little bit forward from where the house to be demolished is, and so on and so forth. Much effort was spent working with the planning department, and they weren't going to be satisfied until the other authorities were satisfied. And as such, there was no planning report that we're aware of that shows any objection to the proposal. So in working with the various authorities, you have the correspondence from the TRCA from March 22nd showing no objection to the proposal through design changes that we made with them. Ravine and Natural Features Protection from Dan Hammerschlag on Feb 19, also no objection. Urban Forestry and Ravines, also no objection, that's Yuroslav. And finally, we conducted a Zoom meeting with the immediate neighbors on March 11 to describe the proposal and to see if we could answer any questions. At the time, their concerns were primarily water-based. That is, because of the geography, once again, and the convergence of the water flow. The land that this house is being proposed on will need some significant water abatement addressed. Not part of this committee of adjustment hearing, but we're well aware that we're going to need some underground water devices to carry the water to the street. We're also aware that there was some letters of objection put forth by a couple of neighbors on the other side and down the street. But I would like to just really address the concerns of our neighbors immediately to the north and south that came in yesterday to the committee. Their concern was expressed again about water and also the side yard setbacks. So I just want to say as such before any questions are put forward to me, which I would be happy to address any of the variances. We no longer require variance 4 or variance 6, and variance 6 addresses that side yard setback. So we are going to remain at the permitted setback of 0.9 and no longer require that setback. That was really for bay windows located on the second floor, which had nothing to do with water or access to the rear. But we decided to remove that variance. So we no longer require 4 and 6. And if the committee would like to ask any particular questions about the variances, I'm pleased to answer them. Just one thing that probably stands out to you, and it would to me as well, the proposal is not a 4-story house, but it is technically defined that way because of the location of the first floor being at the garage level. And so the gross floor area that is proposed in the basement is included and magnifies the density number as well. But it is a 3-story house over the garage level at grade.
Mr. Liebrecht, I just want to be certain that I've got the right number 4 and 6 variances, because sometimes the applicants have different documents than we do.
Yeah, so that's true. That's true.
Number 4 talks about front porch stairs will be 2.03 meters wide instead of 2. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, that one's not required, of course.
And 6.
And the other one is variance 6, which speaks to the minimum required side yard setback of 0.9, and the detached house will be located 0.3 meters to the north. That was because of proposed bay windows at the second floor, but since then we have decided to remove those, and so therefore variance 6 is no longer required.
Okay, thank you. Well, we're at Edom as to which ones are not required. Panel, do you have any questions of Mr. Liebrecht? Yes, Imran?
So I have a few questions. The first is, can the applicant explain what is on the roof of the building?
Yeah, of course. The design of the roof is really, it's a clerestory window. It's not a habitable space. The height of the proposal is measured to the top of the roof of that clerestory window. The window feature itself is not visible from the sides or the street whatsoever. And so the actual height of the top of the roof is 11.31 meters, which is 109.7 geodetic. The neighbor to the north is currently at 109.6 geodetic. So the top of the roof, not the feature that you see above it, which is centered and set back. The side elevation would describe its position relative to the front elevation. is really not a visible element, but it is a clerestory window facing to the back.
And so why does it have to be that high? Is it just, can it be lower and still covered in, I'm assuming it's glass to let light come through?
It could be. The idea here is to use a window rather than a skylight. Could the technician please move the drawings down to the side elevation? Hold on, that's the back. If you wouldn't mind just stopping there for a moment. So you can see there is a window facing to the ravine. It's not a view, it's to bring natural light in through a window, not a skylight. And it's very, very shaded back there. There's a lot of trees. The ravine goes up. It's a reverse ravine, so it goes up high, and it's quite shaded all in that backyard, but you would not get direct sun through that clerestory. If you move to the side elevations, please. Although it's sideways here. I don't know if you can turn the drawing, but you can see how far back it is set from the, you got the arrows in the middle there. Yeah, thank you. You can see how far back it is set from the front and rear elevations. So it is not something that you can see whatsoever. However, the zoning approach here measures to the top of that element. In fact, the top of the roof is at 11 meters, where you have the top of the, the third floor.
Great, thank you. And the other two questions, one related to the FSI, if you can just explain what is triggering such a large increase. And
yes,
then
absolutely.
The other question relates to the soft landscaping in the front yard.
Yeah, absolutely. If you, the determination of first floor in this case is the garage level. So as such, if you look at the basement plan, ordinarily you would not include a basement in the GFA on a typical flat site and so on like that. But if you look at the basement, that's correct, that's it. So there's a garage and some storage, and then all of the area exclusive of the garage is included in that number. So the actual number is 0.9 for the home, but it has been increased because the calculation here includes the basement floor space as well. And then your other question was about the landscaping.
Yes.
Quite frankly, I don't really understand how that number was arrived at, because when you look at it, it doesn't really make sense to me. The landscaping actually, when you measure it, and I checked it, is actually 66%. The examiner did not include the area of the planters flanking the front entrance stair for some reason. And I think we maintained the driveway that is currently there. We're not touching that. And so I think with combined together, the soft landscaping admittedly is low, but that's just how the examiner decided to calculate it.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Liebrook, with respect to the soft front landscaping, is the soft landscaping compromised by the number of stairs needed to get to the front door?
I would say yes. But if you look, if you're able to, I don't know if you're able to pull up the report that I submitted. There is an image of the house next to us, an existing home to the north, and that is, prevalent on the street. There are homes that do require, because of the geography and so on, these stairs up to the first floor. And that's exactly how the existing house that is being demolished was as well. It had stairs going up to a front porch and an entry. So it's typical of the neighborhood and results in a reduced amount of landscaping. Once you have the driveway and the stairs, the soft part is reduced.
All right. Any further questions, panel? Yes, Carl?
Could you tell me if you have the support of the immediate neighbors? I have opposition from 161 and 152. But unless I've missed it, and I don't have anything that indicates whether your adjacent neighbors are in support.
Okay, so 161 and 152 is in opposition. They are
Yeah, I know that.
across and down. A report was submitted yesterday by the adjacent neighbors who we spoke to. And if you read it, their concern was the side yard setback, which we no longer require.
Yes.
And they were really mostly concerned about the impact of water issues that exist on a site that the owner has adopted by purchasing a lot and will need to address with them. When we spoke to them on a Zoom call, that was the repeated concern, was how we will address drainage and water issues. And we are more than clear that is a significant challenge and will be a cost to the owner, but nonetheless will be necessary to build a new structure here.
So you've come to an agreement with them. What about the owner on the other side?
Carl?
Well, the letter is sent in joint for the northerly
For both
neighbor.
of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
The northern house is, if you look at it, is we're designing it similar to that one. They are much longer. We are far shorter, but when I read the report, the kind of the mood of the letter really speaks to the water drainage issue and the side yard setback.
So then based on your collaboration with them, you believe they're satisfied now?
No, Carl.
Well,
Mr. Liebrick and Carl, the 164 and 168 are listed here as speakers. So I think we should.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Could wait for them to have their say.
Okay, good. Yes, I'd like to hear from them.
Thank you.
That'd be great.
Okay. All right. Any further questions, or can I move on to the other speakers? Okay. So, Ms. Chown.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Have you heard Mr. Liebrach and his presentation and his answers to the questions?
I have. Thank you very much. And if possible, can I pass off to Miss Jessica, who's also Miss Jessica Greenwood, who's also.
Yeah, but she's listed. Excuse me. So you want to?
She's going to speak on behalf of us, if possible.
Okay, that's fine. Could we have your full name and your address first before we sign you off?
Sure. My name is Sarah Chown. I'm at 164 Neville Park Boulevard.
Okay, thank you. We move on to Miss Greenwood.
Hi, Miss Greenwood. Can you hear us? You're unmuted.
Can I be heard now?
Yes, you can.
Good morning, members of the committee, and good morning, Mr. Chair. My name is Jessica Greenwood. My address is 168 Neville Park. I'm the house to the north that you've been hearing about. I own a California Cape Cod style home. It's true that you'll see on the plans that it's longer. However, at the back, the length stretches out as only a first floor. It's only a one story that stretches out in the back there. That does not go all the way back up. So it is longer than the house to the south that's seeking the variance. And Mr. Liebrach is correct. We did have a discussion on March 11th, and we learned a lot about what the plans are, but I do still think both Ms. Chown, who's at 164 Neville Park, and my neighbor, we have concerns about the size. We're glad to hear this morning that the variation number 6, the side setback, has been abandoned because that really does impede our ability to access our backyards if the sides of the house are constructed in such a way that the houses are so close together. And we feel that that's not consistent with the character and nature of our street and the way that these single-family dwellings look on our street. So overall, we're happy that the dilapidated house is going to be replaced, and we support that. but we're concerned about the size and the magnitude and how that will impact our properties. And as you've heard, there are these significant water concerns, and we haven't really heard about how that's going to be dealt with in a way that gives us comfort.
Ms.
So
Greenwood.
Those are our concerns. I wouldn't say that we are opposed to all of the variances. That's not the case. But we want it to be appropriate and consistent with the rest of the street. So just to reiterate, both Ms. Chown and I have fairly classic style homes, and this is going to be a very modern style home. There are other modern homes up the street, but the adjacent two houses are fairly classic styles.
All right, Ms.
Subject
Green.
to any questions.
Yeah, Ms. Greenwood, I have a question. First of all, the water issues are within our mandate. They are part of building, and Mr. Liebrook has indicated that his client knows about them, and he will have to address them. The city will ensure that. So you gave us a vague, aside from variance number 6, which is now removed, I wasn't sure what it was you were objecting to. If you could point us to a particular variance that you think is objectionable, or is it just that you feel this house is a little too large, or and not in keeping with your house and Ms. Chown's house?
Yes, I would say it's the latter overall. I mean, and just in terms of the use of the side areas and how we access our backyards, in terms of the elevation and how that, I'm looking at the requested, the zoning for what section that was in terms of the elevation and how the sides of the house would be crafted. But I agree with you, Mr. Chair, it's the latter.
Okay, thank you very much. Unless the panel has any questions of Ms. Greenwood? No? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Greenwood. We'll go back to Mr. Liebrock. Do you have any comments to make with regard?
Yeah, I would be happy to make them. I just wanted to be clear. The setback requested was on the second level, was never meant to impede access to the back whatsoever, but it's now no longer there at all. So could I please see the site plan just so I can clarify, because the location map was not up to date and accurate. Yeah, that is the condition that we're talking about. So those projections that you see towards the front on the sides are no longer going to be needed with the removal of variance 6. And then once again, I reiterate, what's likely going to happen here is, with an understanding of the water issues and some more recent testing that's been done, if you could just skip to the basement level, please. It is unlikely that my client is going to build a basement here at all, except for the garage and entry. So stop there. I can't touch the screen, but everything beyond the stairs will not likely be constructed, just because there are these water issues. And so really it is intended that the garage, the storage and so on, laundry, and just everything up to access the stairs to get up to the first floor will remain. And so I can't tell you exactly what it's going to be, but I can tell you that the area above the ground, not in the basement, is 0.9. And all of the other, which takes us up to 1.22, is coming from the basement square footage, which is going to be reduced considerably with the elimination of that rec room.
Okay.
We didn't know about the water issues really until we really spoke to the neighbors, and we actually had some soil pit testing done, and it became clear that would be unwise to build, actually.
Okay, panel, do you have any questions? Yes, Carl?
Could you clarify, if you're only going to build half of the basement, which of your variances changed then?
Well,
floor space index would be less than 1.22, correct?
That's correct. I mean, we don't know what, I mean, I can't say that, how it would be reduced, but I'm just saying that the number comes from the addition of the basement square footage. If it would please the committee that number would be reduced to like a number that made sense to them, we would accept that, because it is very unlikely that we're going to be building that recreation space at all.
I think if that's your proposal, it seems to address the concerns of the adjacent owners. I, for one, would be pleased to, if you were to amend your variance number 7 to be a number that doesn't include the portion of or that includes what you're going to build, and then doesn't include the section of the basement that you're anticipating not building. I think that would be a fair change to give the adjacent owners some sense of comfort about the discussions you've had.
Because I don't know the math exactly, I would be comfortable saying 1.1 or 1, maybe let's call it 1.1. I don't know the exact area that won't be built, but I can only say that number comes from an additional 0.32 times the area because of the addition of all of that basement area that would, so I would say 1.1 times area would be the revised floor space index.
And what would be the square meters then?
Let's see, 1 times the lot area, I think. So the lot area is 3.
So are you dropping the basement?
Well, we're who's asking that question?
It's Barbara Bardisic, the Deputy Secretary Treasurer.
We're not dropping the basement. We intend to eliminate the area west of the stair. So all of that back area would not be required and probably not desired because of the water. We want the owner to have an entrance from the garage into the house that will allow them to walk up in the winter internally. So that's the justification to keep the stair and access to it. So the idea would be to eliminate the recreation room. I could do a calculation. If you zoom in, I could look at it, but the new gross floor area would be 4.14 square meters. So 1.1 times the area and the
the figure, can I help? I got if the equivalent to 412.71 square meter, 412.71 square meter. That's 1.1.
Yeah, I would, yeah, that's fine. 4.12.7.
Yeah.
412.7 meters would be the proposed gross floor area.
Okay. Any further questions? All right. Thank you.
So just to clarify, Mr. Chairman, then the applicant is amending variance number 7 to a lesser amount, the numbers that we just discussed. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. Mr. Liebrecht?
Thank you.
That is correct. Can I speak?
Yes.
Yes, and just in the future, you shouldn't be making any revisions in your rebuttal. They should be made off the top when you're presenting your application.
Okay, thank you. The proposal is the floor space index of 1.1 times the area, or 4. I didn't get the number that came from the committee member. 412.71. 412.71 square meters. My apologies.
Okay, let's now move in. Let me just go back to Miss Greenwood just for a moment. Miss Greenwood?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm here.
Yeah, okay. So you've heard the discussion about reducing the basement to 1.1, 412.71 square meters?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so that's okay with you?
yes, I guess what I would say is I defer to the committee on the assessing the remainder of the variances. I don't have that expertise, and so, but
Yeah.
I'm content with that amendment.
Well, yeah, I think Mr. Leebrook explained that that would assist the owner with dealing with the water problem.
Right,
If he
right.
built more basement, he would have more problems with water. So I think this addresses some of your concern, I think.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, panel. Do we have any comments, or do we have a motion? Yim?
Yes, just one question, and I want to ask the applicant, they are still subject to TRCA permit, right?
That is correct. Yes, that is correct. They don't have concerns with the proposal, but yes, we'd still have to obtain.
Yeah, okay,
permit.
thank you.
All right. Yes, Carl?
Mr. Chairman, I think with the revision that's been proposed by the applicant and with the removal of variants 4 and 6, I think this is a reasonable proposal. It's responding to some collaboration with the neighbors, and I think with those changes, it's supportive of the context in which we find ourselves. On that basis, I'd like to move approval of the amended application, and that's with variants 4 and 6 removed and variants number 7 changed to 1.1 and 412.71, and subject to forestry condition number 1. I'm not sure that we need to put an RCA condition in or not. I'm open to suggestions.
No, they haven't requested it.
Okay, so then just forestry condition number 1.
We have a seconder, Peter. All in favor? You have your approval, sir. Thank you very much. Next item is number 81 Dingwall Avenue. Purpose of the application is to alter the existing 2.5-story townhouse by converting the attic into a 3rd story and widening the dormer. And with this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, 9 form letters in support. Mr. Moskal?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Moskal may have dropped off the call, so I'm just trying to contact him now.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yep, Mr. Moskal? Mr. Moskal? Hello?
Oh, come on. Hello?
Mr. Moskal, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, yes.
Okay, thank you. Can we have your name and your address, please?
It's Dave Moskal from Dave Moskal Designs, 14 Augustus Terrace, Toronto.
Thank you. Okay, so could you just, I'm not sure we need a presentation, panel? Do we need a presentation
sure.
in this matter? No, I don't. Is there anything, we're going to take it into committee, sir. Is there anything you want to say before we take it into committee?
Just that we do have adjacent homeowners, letters of support, 7 letters of support in the neighborhood, and that this is not really altering anything with the front scape of the existing dwelling, and just adding another room upstairs. And the reason for the variance is that the existing FSI as built is already over, so any new FSI will trigger a variance.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Are the support letters, do they include number 79? If I read your drawings correctly, that's the one that's the most impacted.
That's correct. Now, that is owned by David and Sue Thatcher, who are the executors of Sylvia Mitchell's estate, who own 81 Dingwall, okay? So the owners at 79 are David and Susan, and they are the adjacent neighbors, but they also are the executors of Sylvia Mitchell, who has passed away.
And that's at 79.
Correct, yes. And we have all the legal
thanks.
documentation of that.
Thank you.
Okay, any comments, or do we have a motion? Peter?
Yeah, I'm happy to bring a motion for approval. I think this is a very straightforward application that's just adding some living space within the attic and expanding the dormer, so I can see no negative impacts on the neighbors or the neighborhood. So I move to approve with no conditions.
Okay, we have a seconder. Carl? Are you seconding? Yes, Carl?
I was seconding it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? You have your approval, sir. Thank you very much. Number 647 Maxwell Avenue. The purpose of this application is to alter the existing two-story detached dwelling by constructing a two-story rear addition, a front porch, and a rear deck. Louis Seguil.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just want to bring to your attention the agent, Bruno Lopez, is also on the line, but not on the registered list. But I'll have Louis Sigil on the line connected now.
Okay, so who's speaking? Okay.
Hi. Hi, Louis, can you hear us? You're unmuted.
Hello?
Hello.
Good morning, committee. My name is Luis Sigil Romero.
Yes.
I want to just mention, and I'm Bruno. I'm here with Luis actually. So we have some kind of misunderstanding about the registry, but we are actually both online.
Okay. So, but we only want to hear. We only want one presentation. So if you could make up your minds who's going to speak, and you only have 5 minutes, so we better get ahead with it. Cindy?
I'll speak. I'll be Bruno from MAXWELL Engineering.
Okay, go ahead.
So the application that you have before you guys, it's something straightforward. It's an existing two-story house that the owner wants to do some extension to the back. There are a few variances that we have, especially number 1 and number 4. These are our existing conditions, and if you can see the report actually from transportation, they have no comments on the application because this is an existing situation. It's already an existing permit for parking. So we try not to disturb the existing conditions. So if you can see, I don't know if you have access to a Google Map view, but there is a mature tree on the south front side of the lot that actually expands and goes through that entire parking space and existing front yard landscaping. So the idea is not to touch anything on the front yard. So whatever you see there, it's existing condition and to remain. The only minor little change on the front is that the stairs that currently are on the north side coming towards the driveway, now we're gonna switch it around. So we're gonna take stairs out of the, let's say, over the tree roots. So we try to do a betterment in terms of protecting the tree. In terms of the mass of the building, we are asking for 0.86 times, or let's say 86% coverage. It's fairly consistent with the neighborhood, although it's only 60% allowed. But again, we are not talking, the committee has previously approved for this area, close to 100%. So we are not asking anything above normal. And there is this side yard setback that we should be respecting this 0.45 meters, but in fact, we are pretty much about zero. There are a few houses on the neighborhood. If you go along the neighborhood, you'll see number 11, number 13. Pretty much they are touching eaves. They are pretty much on zero lot set line. So in these regards, planning, they didn't make any comments. We have discussions. They were not greatly in favor, but they didn't oppose. So again, we think our application is a very normal and natural application. We are aware and cognizant that there are, I believe, 16 letters of opposition. So from what we actually understand is the next door neighbor just went around the neighborhood and collect a lot of signatures, including from rental properties, which were not homeowners. So anyway, I think she wants to voice her preoccupation about the second floor little bump out that we are doing. Again, it's nothing obnoxious. It's being done multiple places around the city. It's not yet existing on this particular street, but again, it's nothing uncommon on the city. Again, we try to maintain the character. The front facade is pretty much the same. We're even lowering slightly the pitch of the roof. We maintain pretty much the same window size. So when you go on the street, you're gonna pretty much see almost the exact same home that you see today.
Okay, panel, do you have any questions? Yes, Carl?
Did I understand the applicant, did you say that the planning department didn't raise any concerns? Because I have a report where they actually are concerned. Did I understand your comment correctly?
The only concern that the planning brought forward, and we discussed, they didn't like over the phone, I discussed with the planner, they didn't like much the bump out, the stand out. But the only report that I have, it's that they are against variance number 1 and variance number 4, which is the parking. But the parking is an existing condition, which actually transportation is in agreement with.
Okay, but just so you know, they are recommending variance number 1 not be approved, and they're recommending that the front parking space be redesigned so that it's perpendicular to the front lot line rather than parallel. So you're aware
Correct.
of the recommendations?
I am, and that's exactly what I was trying to say. Exactly, this variance for the landscaping and the parking, it's an existing condition. So if I'll try to satisfy their recommendations, which is flipping the parking around, I'll start to play around with the transportation because we have to apply again and show new plans. But our biggest problem is with forestry, because if we turn around the parking, we're gonna encroach into the mature tree, and we have to destroy more of what is existing already, even on city property. So the landscaping at the end, if we turn around the parking, which I understand what planning was intending to ask their question, we'll have to sacrifice the landscaping, and probably we'll have to sacrifice the tree. And this is a mature tree, and because when you do this construction, you have to be at 4.8 meters TPZ. So we're gonna encroach into this tree root area, and again, I rather keep the existing conditions, everything as is. And if you have access, if you actually saw the street or the next adjacent neighbor, there is exactly the same parking. It's mimic. It's like a mirror. Number 45.
The other option that you didn't respond to is having variance number 4 refused, which would not give you any parking in the front lot, in the front yard, which would save the tree and would also not be in competition or in conflict with what the planning department is recommending.
Correct. That would be an option to take the parking completely, but again, that's the purpose, is to have the parking and maintain the existing condition, because again, just to reinforce again, this is an existing condition, there is an existing license, an existing agreement, so we just keep everything existing.
Thank you for clarifying.
No problem.
All right.
I've got a question on that parking.
Yes.
I thought that the neighbor on the left side has a parking space that is perpendicular to the street, and as opposed to parallel to the street when I'm looking at Google Street View.
Yes, absolutely, you're absolutely correct, but this is neighbor to the north. I'm talking about neighbor to the south.
And so why can't you match what your adjacent neighbor is doing? I don't understand that.
We could do it, but again, if we do it, we're gonna start to encroach into the tree root from this mature tree. So then I'll have a problem with forestry, and forestry will never approve that. And again, so this is ourselves trying to be a good Samaritan to keep the existing conditions as is, so we don't disturb anything. And this was an agreement that was done in the past, so we just keep it exactly as is.
I guess I don't understand that, because it looks like the entire front yard almost is covered over with hard material for the existing parking. So if you had concerns with the roots now, were there no concerns before with the roots for what the parking, how the parking was created?
So me not being an arborist, but just understanding a little bit about trees, the neighbor to the north, they have no trees, so they actually can do, they can even make a wider parking if they want to. On our side, that's the problem, it's the roots. The existing, it's been there for many years, and actually are permeable pavers. So anytime you try to do any driveway or front yard replacement, from my knowledge with arborists, is you have to create all these plans and strategies, mitigation, to actually not disturb the roots. So in a sense, if we go that route, we can go, but again, it will create so much disturbance that my fear is that forestry will never approve. So this is about a 60-foot tree. This is a mature, big, huge tree. If you see the canopy, actually the canopy of this tree to the north side covers the entire house, comes pretty much almost to property line. So as a rule of thumb, the trees are pretty much, they reach pretty much where the canopy, the base of the canopy reaches, the arch, right? So again, it's a double sword here. If we don't touch nothing, everything stays as is, and the tree keeps going the way it is. If we try to do something, which to me I don't mind, but the thing is, it will go into some route that probably will never get it done, and we'll get even stronger opposition, and they're gonna call us, why do you gonna touch an existing condition that is suitable and it's working for everybody?
I just need to point out to you though that you mentioned that you have an existing license, but right away and off-street parking, their email says they're okay with the application, but if this variance is approved, your front yard parking license will be canceled.
If so, could be, because we're gonna fit, yes, we again, we can maintain it, or could be canceled. It doesn't matter. If it gets canceled, we got our parking spot that will work the same way. But the owner will even honor and maintain that license if so. According
no, they
to
won't be able to. They're going to cancel it.
Okay, but we will be able to park within the property, so yeah, could be canceled. I don't think it's an issue.
Well, if it's an existing condition, it seems to me that transportation is probably misunderstanding the situation. But in any event...
Well, the site plan isn't entirely accurate because number one, they haven't shown the existing tree. And on the site plan, they've called it a proposed parking pad. They didn't say it's existing.
Okay, but Mr. Sigel, you're satisfied with the variances as they are if we approve them that way? Even though your client will jeopardize their existing parking license?
So sorry, Mr. Chair, you were directing the question to my client?
To you, and I'm asking you if you're satisfied with the variances as they are, even though if we approve them, there's a risk that your client's parking license will be jeopardized.
Yes, I'm okay because we might lose the license, but again, we still keep the spot. If you approve the application as is, we'll be fully satisfied because we'll keep our parking space parallel to the house, and it's going to be parking within our property limits. Yes, we'll be okay. If that will be the situation, we will move forward.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any further questions, panel? Okay, let's move on to Grace Lee, Wilson Lamb.
Yes, I am Wilson Lamb. I'm the owner of 55 Maxwell. Just a voice check, is my voice okay?
Yes.
Okay, okay, thank you. I'm just responding to the objection of this application based on the criteria on page 2 of the notice, which said the role of the Committee of Adjustment is to provide flexibility in dealing with minor adjustment to zoning bylaw requirements. To approve such variances, the committee must be satisfied of the 4 bullet criteria. I'm going to raise each bullet in turn to the reason why I object this. Number 1, the variance requested is minor. It is not. Based on the variance listed, this is a major variance. For instance, the first one, Chapter 10.5.50.10.1.d, regarding the front yard landscape open space in the form of soft landscaping. I calculate the variance, it represents 21% lesser area required. So in terms of 21% lesser area, what is the criteria for minor variance? So it's a committee to determine. To my opinion, I don't think it is a minor, because if you calculate the 21, how to get the 21% is the 7.9 meters square minus 14.18 meters square divided by 17.9 meters squared to the 21%.
But Mr. Lamb, do you understand that no change is going to be made as this is an existing condition?
Okay, if it's no change, then why is the variance then?
Because it didn't conform with the bylaw. So you need a variance.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned the bylaw. That's why I mentioned the bylaw variance is major, not minor.
No, but it's an existing condition. Nothing will change on the site.
All right, I understand, okay? So let me move on to the next point about the permitted floor space. And according to the density is 0.6 times the lot area. The new plan will increase that density to 0.86 times. So if I calculate how much more floor space permitted in the bylaw, it's about 43% more. If you imagine 43% more space in the house, it's almost close to 50% of the house extended at the back end. So I did do a search in the city of Toronto in terms of kind of precedent rules about addition to originally constructed detached, semi-detached duplex and converted dwelling. The residential gross floor area may extend 0.6 times density to a maximum of 0.69 times density. So I think this is a minor if it's only less than 0.7, but this is 0.86 times more density. And it's in terms of the floor space, it's about 43% more permitted floor space in around the area. So I think this is, again, is a major variance. The third point about the minimum required side yard setback, the minimum side yard setback is 0.45 meter. The requested variance is 0. Okay? And the next one is regarding the parking. We talk about the parking. There is already existing parking. I don't know whether the owner want to have additional parking spot on the front, but if this is the case, this is again a violation of the bylaw. So according to the second bullet criteria, whether the proposal is desirable for the appropriate development of the use of the land and the building, as it violates significantly the bylaw regarding the area required for front yard landscaping, permitted density of floor space, minimum side yard setback, and car park provision as per mentioned details. So I don't think even the bullet 2 in the criteria, it is satisfy the criteria of approval. The third criteria is about whether the general intent and purpose of the city zoning code and the bylaw are maintained. Because it is aggressive overhang of 4 feet into a mutual drive, I wonder in case of a fire hazard or emergency that the people cannot, let's say the first responder cannot access to the front, it has to have access to the back. And if the vehicle has a tall ladder, how can you go through the mutual drive if it's a 4 feet extension to the mutual drive? So I have a doubt whether this variance would meet the city bylaw in terms of safety code or fire protection code or even emergency protection code. So I don't know. 4 feet extension across intervention overhang into a mutual drive is a major variance. So I highly recommend the committee to take a look at the major variance and to disapprove the application based on the fact that the variance has significant impact to the neighborhood character. It potentially may cause safety issue in terms of accessing to the back. That's my summary of my objection.
All right, thank you. Any questions, panel? All right, thank you. Let's move on to Sandra Stein.
Yes, good morning. I'm Sandra Stein. I live at 49 Maxwell Avenue. Yes. I'm directly north of the proposal. I'm very concerned about the fact that he's going to have a 4-foot overhang over our mutual right-of-way. It will cause me a lot of concern. It causes me a lot of concern.
All right, Ms. Stein, could I ask you, just for my edification, how high off the ground is that 4-foot extension?
It's the second story.
Second story, okay. All right.
Yeah.
What is your objection?
My objection is that it will cause me to, I'm in a semi-detached house. This is my only house with a wall with a few windows. It will cause me to lose whatever precious light I currently receive. My air conditioning unit is located on the south wall of my property, and I'm concerned that a closer wall will affect its performance. I'm also concerned that it could impede maintenance on my south wall, such as painting the stucco, replacing the eaves, yearly cleaning of the eaves, or repointing brickwork. I also question whether there is a fire safety violation in allowing a right-of-way to be so encumbered. Driveways are narrow, as it is now, and I understand that in order to accommodate this, fire departments are using modified sprinters in order to get through. This would be impossible. The only way to get to the rear of my property is over this right-of-way. From the cityscape point of view, this streetscape point of view, this overhang will look really dreadful. I am surprised that a variance like this could be allowed to go over a mutual right-of-way. I've always felt that a right-of-way was sacrosanct and could not be changed in any way. And also, should this be allowed, there are 27 houses on the street that have mutual rights of ways, and they could all be affected. This could start a very bad precedent for the area.
Well, it's not true. Ms. Stein,
yes.
A right-of-way can be built, an owner can build on a right-of-way on his own property so long as it doesn't affect the purpose of the right-of-way. So long as you continue to use the right-of-way for the purpose for which it was intended, an owner is entitled to build on his portion of the right-of-way. So it will not set a trend because it's always been the law. So carry on.
Well, I was not aware of that. I think that's a terrible thing to put on another owner. Because if he can do it,
so could
I
you.
end up with just a monstrous wall, and I can't do it. So it's unfair.
Well, I'm not talking about this particular overhang. I'm talking about the law generally that if you have a right-of-way, if there's a right-of-way on your property, you can build on your portion of the right-of-way so long as you don't interfere with the purpose of the right-of-way. I'm not passing judgment on what your neighbor intends to do.
Okay, well, then I'll go on to the concept of neighborhoods in the official plan. I don't feel that this property respects that. It says it should respect the existing physical character of buildings, the streetscapes, and open space patterns in the area. It doesn't respect the existing physical character of the area. It's too large for the 30-foot lot upon which it sits. It's unattractive. I feel it's totally inappropriate for the area. And as far as the extension in the back, it is about a third longer than any other extension in the area, and I believe it's 43% more something. Wait a second now. I've got many notes, but I'm getting a little confused here. It has 43% more space. Sorry, I'm just looking for something else. And, okay, and also it will overshadow part of my rear garden. There's a balcony proposed for the second story, which will interfere with my privacy. It's oversized and turns the whole property into a fortress. There was just one other thing I wanted to say, and I can't find my notes.
Ms. Stein, your time is up, so would you please wrap up?
Well, I don't think I think the four tests that I mentioned I think all of this fails for that. They fail in this particular case, and in general senses, privacy and shadow on surrounding properties are impacted. It's not an appropriate change to neighboring lands, does not maintain an appropriate relationship between buildings, and does not respect and reinforce the neighboring character. And that's about all I can say. I'm not a technical person. I cannot go further into what is right or what is wrong. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Panel, do you have any questions of this witness? Okay, let's go on to Ann Ellis.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, okay. My name is Ann Ellis. I live at 40 Maxwell Avenue, and I'd like to thank the committee for their time and consideration of my concerns. I object to a variance being issued for point number 3 as outlined in the public hearing notice. I also own a property on Maxwell Avenue, and I share a mutual driveway with my neighbor. I am concerned that if the variance is approved, it will set a precedent for similar side extensions over shared right-of-ways throughout the neighborhood. I am also unclear as to how the 0.45 meter allowed setback is applicable to a right-of-way. So first, I do not support the applicant's request to extend the second story of the building to the north side lot line, creating a 4-foot overhang. I do not support any second story extension of any length over the existing right-of-way. And second, I do not agree, after review of the zoning bylaws, that a 0.45 meter setback can be permitted in this instance without requiring a variance approval. As such, I respectfully request that the stated allowable setback of 0.45 meters be reviewed, as I believe in this case the setback is 1.24 meters, and my argument is as follows. The notice states for point number 3 that the minimum required side yard setback for an addition or extension to the rear side of a lawfully existing building or structure is 0.45 meters, and goes on to say the applicant is requesting a 0-meter setback. So based on the statement, if the variance is denied, then the applicant would be approved for a 0.45 meter setback from the property line. But keep in mind, when setbacks are talked about in zoning bylaws, they don't talk about the setback 1 story up, but rather setbacks start at ground level and go straight up vertically. So this would mean that the applicant would be granted a variance to build 0.45 meters from the center of the driveway where the property line lies. But we have to keep in mind that this property's side yard is actually a mutual driveway, also referred to as a right-of-way, which is referred to on the June 12, 2020 survey submitted with the application as 2 easement instruments. Now, in my review of the 391-page zoning bylaw document, I could not find any reference to mutual driveways and right-of-ways with respect to setbacks. I did, however, find in Chapter 800, definition number 400, for lane. A lane means a public right-of-way that is not for general traffic circulation. I believe that this is the most appropriate definition for a mutual driveway. The only difference is that the mutual driveway is a private right-of-way, not a public right-of-way. So if lane is used to define the setbacks, then Chapter 10.5.40.70 subsection 2 setbacks applies and states, building or structure to be set back from a lane, a building or structure in the residential zone category may be no closer than 2.5 meters from the original center line of a lane. In the case of 47 Maxwell Avenue, the current setback from the middle of the driveway to the edge of the north side of the building appears to be 1.24 meters, based on what I could discern from the survey. As such, the existing structure is encroaching on the above setback rules of 2.5 meters. However, under Chapter 10.5.40.71, subsection 1, Part C, setback exemptions, a side lot line, that lawful building setback is the minimum side yard setback for that lawfully existing building or structure. So as I understand it, this would grandfather in the existing setback of 47 Maxwell Avenue of 1.24 meters and allow the existing building's north wall to remain where it is. So based on interpreting a mutual driveway to be defined as a lane, the setback that could be permitted without a variance would be where the existing north brick wall of 47 Maxwell Avenue currently sits. However, if I go on to simply interpret the chapter cited in point number 3 of the public hearing notice, I calculate 1.24 meters to be the allowable setback exemption as follows. The chapter referenced in point number 3 states, the required minimum building setback from the side lot on a frontage of 9.0 meters to 12.2 meters is the greater of either Part I, 50% of the required minimum side yard setback, or Part II, the minimum side yard setback permitted by regulation 10.5.40.71 subsection 1. So by my calculations, in the case of 47 Maxwell Avenue, Part I equals 50% of 0.9 meters, which equals 0.45 meters per regulation 10.10.40.70, and Part II equals 1.24 meters, as I previously calculated under setback exemptions. Thus, the greater of Part I, or Part II, is Part II at 1.24 meters. And I'm happy to provide a written version of the comments I've made today by an email if requested. Thank you for your time.
All right, panel, do you have any questions? All right, let's move on to the next speaker, Mr. Steep or Miss Carfell.
Oh, yes. Hello, yes. Can you hear me okay? Sound check.
Yes.
Great. My name is Michael Steep. I live at 11 Duplex Crescent, as does my wife, Natasha Carfell. I'll be the only one speaking as per your process here. So we have an objection to the request for variance, specifically number 2. And to summarize, we're very concerned, my wife and I, of the impact on our enjoyment of our property, specifically the use of our backyard and any privacy. And so, for the sake of clarity, 11 Duplex Crescent would share the back fence with the proposed variance we're speaking of here. So on the cul-de-sac, that's Duplex Crescent, we're number 11, and our backyard then, that does have the one level garage that's shared with my neighbor at 12 Duplex, it pushes both onto the lane. And I believe then that we heard from, I haven't met this lady, but the lady just to the north of 47, 49. So anyway, so that's where we are, number 11. So what really concerns us in number 2 is the impact on us in enjoying our backyard as it pertains to the extension and the entire home moving and what I would describe pushing up against the eastern property line, and the size of the addition as it pertains to the massive wall we will be looking at that we currently are not, right? That the current structure that extends eastward is a single level. The slope of the roof is also sloped downwards towards us. It's a 4-pitch roof, whatever you might call that. So when I'm referring to slope of the roof, I'm speaking of it from west to east as it slopes downwards, as it moves east to us. And so it's much less ominous. But I think generally, when I look at the whole proposed plan, there's a complete lack of any consideration for the neighbors, including myself, wholesale here. So the fence that separates us, which is a slotted cedar fence, was partially paid for by the owner of the house when he lived there prior to the new people last year coming in, and the neighbor to the south and the neighbor to the east. So it's one continuous fence. And so we all got together, and there's been some dialogue, and we talked to our neighbors. And so again, this variance seems to just throw all that out the window. The reason I bring it up is I think at the beginning, I'm not sure if it's Mr. Bruno or Bruno made some suggestion that maybe there's some dialogue with neighbors. I just want to be clear that my wife and I received none. We're also sorry we didn't submit a written submission. I'm timing, it's my fault. I didn't get it in. I didn't realize the timing exactly. But we want by no means that to indicate how strenuously we object to what is taking place here. So then specifically, yes, as I look at my notes here to make sure I'm covering off my points, if you allow the variance to take place, the enjoyment of our backyard will be potentially greatly impacted. If the amount of activity that we've noticed that's increased with the new owners continues, then pushing that activity closer to the eastern side of the fence with a balcony, with access to the basement that would be new, with a smaller yard area, would appear to even allow for the potential for more activity in the backyard and allow for more invasion of privacy to our backyard. Our backyard is incredibly important to us for 21 years because when I sit here speaking to you, I look out past my computer, that is a $2.5 billion Oxford development that's taking place where they're, because it's a high density zone, we understand that. So the backyard does afford us all the privacy and quiet enjoyment, I might add, even from the metro links and everything that's being built almost literally out front our front door. So in our case, the backyard really matters. We've done the stonework and the deck so we can enjoy it. We're afraid this will negatively impact it in a very big way. And that it does ignore totally, on a wholesale basis, any consideration of the neighbors, and certainly in our case.
Panel, do you have any questions of Mr. Steep? All right, thank you, Mr. Steep. Mr. Sigel?
It's Bruno, actually. So, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, I'll try to be brief, even though that I have to put comments rebutting a few different speakers. What I like to bring forward, starting from the end, number 11, Duplex Crescent, just to remind this neighbor that the backyard is actually being divided by this massive tree that is probably about 60 feet tall. It's with a big, huge canopy. There is I'll say a considerable amount of cedars, and they are 8 feet plus height, so they tend to grow. So in terms of privacy, to be honest, I think the existing conditions are already very private, and they will tend to become even more private. In regards to the length of the building, we are within the 17 meters allowed by law. So I don't think the length of the building should play even a factor in here. In regards to other comments about the bump out to be pretty much on zero lot set line, again, I would like to bring forward to committee that there are a few different homes within that street that eaves draws are pretty much touching. So if they are not on zero lot set line, they are very, very close to zero lot set line. Bringing as well the comment on driveways, shared driveways. If you go up and down the streets, there are only just a handful of driveways that actually you can fit a car, or they have about 8 or more feet. So some of them, they are literally just 4 feet wide and so on. So bringing the fact of access for firefighters or so, I don't think it's fair to make that comment, because you are being unfair to other houses that actually the walls are almost abutting to each other. In terms of construction above a right-of-way, you actually nailed it really well, Mr. Chair. These agreements are meant to have these entrances clear at all times and not blocked, and they were meant for access for cars. So cars are of course not 30 feet high, and again, these bump outs are actually quite common around other places in the city. So it's not on that particular street. Again, there is no bump out as look-alike as the one we have. Actually, there is another house down the street, number 40. It's an odd number. I don't know off the top of my head. It's a stucco house that actually has some bump outs to the side, and it's actually full from main floor to second floor. It's not just the second floor. So there are some other houses. If you see from Google Maps, you see number 29, and you see at the end of the street, the first house, number 5. They actually go beyond the 17 meters. So in terms of mass and GFA, FSI, like we are seeking, there are examples on the street that are actually more than what we're requesting. So again, to wrap up, I think our application is very balanced. It's common. We keep the features of the area. We keep the same facades. We try to keep as much as possible with the neighborhood so we don't disturb. However, the client wants to introduce some kind of a new, unique, particularly this bump out. Again, it's a little bit of modern, but nothing obnoxious that actually doesn't fit the neighborhood.
So can I ask you about variance number 3? What is that?
Yeah, it's the bump out. So if you see through the drawings, maybe it's not as you don't have the perception if you just see the front facade. But if you see, let's say, the roof design or the second floor design, you see the bump outs are actually not from front to back of the house. It's partial bump outs to actually accommodate some more room on the bedrooms.
No, but I want variance number 3 talks about the building being located 0 meters from the north side lot line.
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Chair. That's exactly the bump outs. They're gonna be very close to 0 lot set line.
So the bump out is what's causing this 0 meter.
Correct. Correct. It's the bump out that is triggering this variation. Only the bump outs.
Even though, so is that the bump out on the second floor, or is that another bump out?
No, it's just the second floor.
So even though it's on the second floor, it's considered when you're talking about the lot line?
Yes, correct. So according to zoning, yes, it's the, I would say, the closest part of the facade that counts into this setback. I would say about 60 to 70% of the house, if we do the math on that side, it's actually according to the bylaw, It's just a portion on the second floor that might be tops 40% that is actually encroaching, and it's creating these variants.
Okay.
And again, just one more little topic, because the next door neighbor was concerned about fire and access, and so just to be clear that this is allowed. This is part of the next phase, which is building permit drawings. We have to be compliant with fire code. We have to actually protect the house and protect the neighbor, building fire-rated walls. We don't have windows on that particular facade. So again, we are compliant with everything, with the exception that particular bylaw existing for this area doesn't allow the zero lot set line.
Okay. Panel, do you have any questions of this witness? Carl?
Yes, I do have a question.
Okay, Yim.
Yes, only I know that to the applicant, I know you have been working with the building department. I just want you to reiterate that this 4 variances actually gone through zoning review, right? Because on the application, I did not see you have a zoning certificate, but I'm so sure that this not come from you. It's actually have been vetted by the building department for zoning review, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
we haven't achieved zoning certificate. No, we will require zoning certificate, and it's again whenever your committee approves the variances. Yes.
No, I just want to mention this because there's some opposition. Seems that there's there are some missing variances, but I just want to ensure that these are the only 4 that
Yes. If we are granted these 4, we are okay, and we'll proceed with whatever committee will approve.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions, Carl?
I had basically the same question. Could you just clarify, because it isn't indicated on the application, did you have a project review by the zoning department before coming here? Or are you going based on your understanding of it?
We did a few iterations with zoning. Yes, we did. I spoke personally with zoning examiner Nick Sezito a few times. I speak personally with planning department for the comments for the parking and so. And I spoke with multiple city staff. Yes.
So these variances are the result of the zoning department advising you what you needed to proceed?
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
Any further questions? All right, let's go into committee. Any comments?
One last question. Sorry, Mr. Siegel. You have mentioned the existing GFA before the FSI. I did not write it down, but can you tell me again what is the existing before the addition?
Hello,
Mr. Siegel, are you still here?
Existing, sorry, I thought that was going to stop, so it's to me. The existing is about 50%, 48, 45. Yeah, it's slightly below the allowed, correct?
Okay, 55.55%. Okay, thank you.
All right. Any comments? We have a motion. Peter?
Are we into committee now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I'll start with a few comments. I think this is a difficult application. Maybe starting with city planning's comments on the parking. I actually think the existing situation for parking is preferable to what city planning is recommending. I think there's already quite nice screening in the front of the property with a hedge and with the tree, and I think that arrangement, if that was changed, would result in I think difficulty getting to the same level of landscaping, even though the landscaping is lacking, as well as probably losing another street parking space. So I think it's not ideal in its current form, but I think that given that it's an existing condition, that is actually better than the alternative, particularly in putting the mature tree at risk. The other things that gave me some comfort is depth and height are not in question here. I think that's that was kind of surprising to me that it's not, and I think maybe that's why the questions from my fellow members came up. So really, it's coming down to FSI, and I don't see that as being a terribly oppressive thing. I'm leaning towards supporting this application, but I think that I would, in order to cover the whole side yard setback issue, I think we'd have to tie it to elevations for the second level. Anyway, those are my thoughts.
Yes. Yes. I like to also add on to what Peter just said. To me, I think there's a little bit of a nervousness in the neighborhood, and also the attempt to interpret the zoning bylaw. But I just would like, that's why I asked the question that this actually have been reviewed by the zoning department, and they're the expert on that aspect. And set aside, and I do agree with the applicant to choose not to disturb the existing condition in the front. When there's something that has been working for so long, and you really do not know what you're opening up as a can of worms. And if something been there for so long working, it means that it is consistent with the neighborhood. And with the right of way, and Mr. Chairman already mentioned, every right of way is created for a purpose. If it's not interfering with the purpose, they will be allowed to build to what the zoning allowed them. So they're asking for the variance because they want to push to the zero lot line as a right. They can actually build over it up to 0.45 meter. So they can have the overhang as of right anyway, but it will be, but they're asking for a bigger overhang right now. So to sum up all that, I think that I can support the application, because the only thing is the FSI that is asking for more. But I think that for the current trend and for the neighborhood, I think that I can support that extra FSI.
Carl?
That's all my comments.
Carl?
Mr. Chairman, I agree with Peter about the parking. I think the existing condition is preferable to what is being proposed by planning. I think the existing vegetation is really quite commendable, and I'd hate to see it changed. I'd also hate to see a loss of street parking. The other variances don't concern me at this point based on the discussion we've had. I, however, disagree with my colleagues. I cannot support variance number 3. Yes, you can overhang a right-of-way, providing that we change the bylaw, and I didn't hear any good reason for changing this bylaw to allow for that overhang. It's going to create, as we heard, a hardship for the adjacent neighbor. And I think her explanation of the hardship was quite feasible and quite instructive. I don't see any reason for supporting variance number 3. I'd be prepared to support the rest of the application, but not variance number 3.
Nimrod?
Yeah, I would agree with Carl's comments. I have concerns with encroaching into the shared driveway. What's the point of having a shared driveway with an easement agreement if you can build over top of it and potentially block in the future a higher vehicle? We don't know today what vehicles might be later on. You can have a pretty high truck today, and this is a second-story addition. It's not starting at the 30-foot high mark, which I think the applicant indicated. It's actually starting at the top of the first floor. And so, you know, I think we don't know what implications this will have in the future. And so I have, I could not support variance number 3.
right, so do we have any further comments, or do we have a motion?
In hearing the other members' concerns about the overhang, I had some concerns with it too, but I think that that's maybe a wise compromise. So I'd be happy to bring forward a motion for approval, except for not including variance. What's that variance, the overhang?
Number 3.
Number 3? Yeah, so a partial approval and not including variance number 3 with no conditions.
Do we have a seconder? Carl?
Yes.
All right. All in favor? All right. All opposed? You're opposed, Jim? Okay. You have your approval, sir, subject to deletion of, but you have no approval with respect to variance number 3. Thank you. Number 7, 174 Durant Avenue. The purpose of this application is to construct a two and a half story dwelling with integral garage and rear ground floor deck. We have before us material submitted by the applicant, a staff report from Urban Forestry. Mr. Mastrandria. We can't. Hello. Mr. Mastrandria, is that you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Please speak up. We couldn't hear you.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. So could you give us your name and your address and a brief presentation?
Yes, hi. My name is Leo Mastandre. I'm the agent for the owners at 121 Durant. And
Well,
we're
just a
here
minute.
today to,
Well, just a minute.
to do a,
Mr. Mastrandrea, we're dealing with 174 Durant Avenue right now.
no, I'm not 174. I'm 121.
Well, you're listed here at 174. We better,
That's why it was strange, because I was number 10 on the agenda, but you called my name, so I just answered.
yeah, no, you are number 10, but we have
I
you.
think they made a mistake on who the agent is, because 174 Durant is item 7, and the agent should be Kelly Poulter.
Yeah. So do we have Kelly Poulter somewhere else?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Kelly Poulter's on the line.
Oh,
Kelly,
okay.
you're unmuted now.
Hello, I'm here.
Okay, Ms. Poulter. We had someone else in your stead. So, can we have your address, please?
Yeah, 174 Durant Avenue.
Okay. Can you just give us a brief presentation?
Sure. Just also so you know, my construction manager, David, is here with me as well, just because this is sort of above my head. This is all new to me. I am the homeowner, but he's really the expert here. So we have lived in this home for 11 years, and it's a bungalow. It's kind of gotten to a pretty bad state, but we have 4 kids, and we'd like to build this house to suit the needs of our family. The variances that we have are on the minor side, and as it was written in the report, you know, what we're requesting really is, again, on the minor side. So we're hoping that you would consider approving it. I don't believe there are any neighbors here that are objecting to it. I do have signatures of support, but unfortunately I submitted them late. But I did speak to all of the direct neighbors, and I don't believe there's any objections. Six signatures of support. The
There are homes on the street that are similar to this design, to this look as well, such as 181 Durant across the street is very similar. We have a new build as well at 182 Durant that has a sort of modern look. We tried to go with this sort of transitional modern and more traditional look, but that's my that's my story.
All right, so Ms. Palter, let me go to the panel. I think we've heard enough, and the application is fairly straightforward and appears to be minor. Panel, do you have any questions of Ms. Palter? Yes, Carl?
Ms. Palter, I note that the highest part of the building is over the garage, and I can't for the life of me figure out your floor plans. Could you walk me through? It's that block, that rectilinear block that has me a little bit concerned. There's a garage, and then on top of the garage there's another room, and then on your plans it has a proposed mid-level plan. Is that then on top of the second floor plan? I'm completely lost by the way the drawings are made.
Yeah, so there's a family room above the garage.
Okay, that's the mid-level plan, okay. And then above the family room, what's there? Is there another bedroom?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you. It's not really clear from the drawings, but thank you, that's helpful.
All right, any further questions, panel? Okay, let's take it into committee. Any comments, or do we have a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to put forward a motion. I believe the variances are minor in nature, and so I would move approval subject to urban forestry condition 1.
Right, Yim, you seconded? All right, all in favor? Yim, you're all in, you have your approval, sir, thank you. Number 8, 234 Ashdale Avenue. Purpose of this application is to construct a new 2-story detached dwelling with a rear basement walkout, a rear ground floor deck, and a front porch. A storage shed will be constructed in the rear yard. We have before us material submitted by the applicant, correspondence from Transportation Services in opposition from 236 and 247 Ashdale. Mr. Benzkowski.
Morning, sir.
Good morning. Could you take us through this briefly?
Yes, this was an application that was before you in November of 2020.
All right.
That application proposed a parking in the front yard, which required a variance, as well as would require a curb cut. At the hearing, I went through my presentation. I spoke with the neighbor to the north about some waterproofing issues. We'd resolved those issues, but the committee was not able to render a positive decision, essentially based upon the proposed parking in the front yard that required a curb cut. So the proposal that is before you today essentially mirrors that proposal, but there is now no parking that is provided on the site at all. This is a compact urban area on Ashdale where lots are small in terms of frontage. The variance relating to depth is basically as a result of the dwelling being pushed in line with the dwelling to the south. So the averaging is what's taken into depth. In addition, the letter of objection, I believe, from one of the neighbors that deals with the parking and the curb cut, there is no curb cut that is proposed here. As you can see from the variance, there is no parking that is going to be provided on the site. And as mentioned previously through you, Mr. Chair, parking and transportation has no concerns. So I'm really happy to answer any questions. This is really kind of our third kick at the can, where this is the last option of parking, where we could propose either a garage, a front pad, or now no parking, which is really the last of the options available to us.
Okay, So Mr. Benskowski, I didn't ask you to give us your address at the outset, so perhaps you can give us your address for the record.
301 Keewatin Avenue.
Okay, thank you. Panel, any questions of this witness? Okay. All right, let's move on to Ms. Wong or Mr. Hosker.
Hi, yeah, I'm actually interested, the owner just said that the water issues were resolved, and our water issues have not been resolved. I'm not sure if we talked to you previously, but we had water issues because your pipe was leaking.
All right, Ms. Wong.
And we still have, yes?
Yeah, please address the panel and not your neighbor.
Okay, sorry.
He will respond if you raise an issue, needs response.
That is when I'm just finding my document.
So we want to know. We want to know what your concerns are.
Yep. We take issue with the narrowed space between the new build and our house, and the size of the proposed new construction.
Could you point us to the variances you're concerned about?
I don't have that record, sorry. It's the variance that has to do with taking up more than 60% of the lot.
Yep, 0.83 times the area of the lot.
Yep.
That's variance number 3.
Yes, thank you. And we also take issue, I don't know if this is actually a variance issue, but the narrowed space between our house and the proposed build.
Okay, so...
which might fall under that same variance.
All right, so variance number 4, the building will be located 0.57 meters from the south side lot line. Is that what you're concerned about?
Yes.
Okay, any other variances you're concerned about?
No.
Okay. Any other comment you want to make before I go back to Mr. Benskowski?
Our main issue is the previous, or the current owners, there's no eaves troughs on this, the current property. And we've sustained damage because of this, some significant water damage, and the side of our house needs to be waterproofed properly. So that's our main concern. If we don't have enough space to do it, then we can't sign off on this build.
Okay, so you're concerned about the space between your house and this new house?
Yes.
Do you know how far back you are from your north side lot line?
We're right on the lot line.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Panel, do you have any questions? Yes, Carl?
Looking at the survey and the site plan, it appears that the new build is actually further from the south property line than the existing condition. I just make that point because I'm going to ask the applicant to respond to that if I'm correct, because that would seem to address some of the concern that the lady that just spoken is mentioning. She's concerned with the distance between her property or her building and the proposed building, and it looks to me as though it's actually larger than the existing condition.
Yeah. She thinks they're shortening the distance. Okay, any further questions? Okay, let's go back to Mr. Benskowski.
Yes, sir. Just to address the water issue, at the previous hearing, maybe I should have been a little clearer. We discussed allowing them access to do their waterproofing over the property during the construction here that they would require. So maybe I should have prefaced the water issue by saying we would have no issue with them using this property as access to waterproof. I also think my friend is a little mistaken with where the variance is requested. The last speaker is actually located to the north, not to the south. If we were able to bring up the survey or the site plan, as mentioned, her property is located directly on the property line. The variance we're requesting is for the south. So in terms of obstructing any of the area she may have today, that just simply won't be the case. But again, as previously mentioned, we are happy to allow access over this property for any waterproofing they might need. And in fact, during the excavation of this property, it would most likely save them some money to do the waterproofing at that point, based upon the limited setbacks between the dwellings. And then through you, Mr. Chair, to answer Mr. Knippel's question, correct. On the south, we are improving the existing setback, which is essentially on the property line at the rear, and increasing it.
Okay, thank you. All right, so, panel, do you have any questions of this witness? All right, we're going to take it into committee now, and any comments or a motion? Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to ask one question of the applicant, if I might.
Yes.
The appellant indicated that there are no eaves troughs on the current building, or no rainwater leaders, and that was of concern to her. I am assuming, and perhaps the applicant could explain this, that the drainage for this particular flat roof building is through drainage system within the house. There's a drain system that takes care of the water through the house. Is that correct?
Correct. So the proposed new dwelling will be able to entirely retain all of the rainwater within the site as per a grading plan that would be issued if this is approved.
Thank you.
Okay. So, yes, Yim, do you have a question?
No, I don't have any more question. I have a motion though.
Okay.
I just wait for other comments.
All right, no other comments. Go ahead, Yim.
Yes, I like to move for approval. The reason is that I think that the applicant has made a very strong attempt to make this work since the last application. And when I also look at the revisions they have done, and also the what's in front of us, and then I think the variants are minor, and I do not think there's any conditions, and I would like to bring a motion to for approval.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Carl, you seconding the motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. All in favor? You have your approval. Thank you, sir. Next item, 298 Glen Road. The purpose of this application is to alter the existing two-story detached dwelling by constructing a rear three-story addition, a front porch, a rear ground floor deck, and a full third-story addition. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, correspondence from transportation, support from 305, opposition from 308, 290, and 296, and 300 Glen Road. Mr. Searle? I'm sorry.
Yes, hello.
Yes, can we have your name pronounced correctly,
Yes,
I assume, and your address?
Yes, Nicholas Antrell of Antrell Studio, 31 Scarsdale Road, Unit 6, and representing the owners Stephen Hall and Elizabeth Dunlap.
Okay. So you better give us a presentation. There's lots of opposition.
Okay. All right, so thank you for hearing me. We have worked on this application in a manner that we feel is least intrusive to the community. While we are asking for 7 variances, we are hopeful that the committee will see our efforts and agree with us that these are minor, and 6 of these, except FSI, are circumstances of the existing restraints of the site.
So would you please
I'd
tell
like to
us
go-
which ones they are?
Yes, I'm going to get to that right now, sir.
Thank you.
So first, I would like to speak with on number 2 and number 7, which is both related to parking. There's in your file, which I believe you just mentioned, a letter from transportation who are not concerned. These 2 variances we believe are a technicality of zoning, as one parking spot is existing and licensed to the property owner and is long-standing and will remain. Again, I'd like to point out that transportation notes in their email on the second line, we are maintaining the spot currently licensed to the owner. Secondly, number 1, 3, and 4 are all related to the side yard setback. We would like to point out that this side yard setback of 0.24 is the setback of the existing home. We considered the Rosedale community that in large is heritage protected. While this home is not heritage, the decision to renovate rather than build new was in part to keep the existing character of the streetscape by keeping the home in its existing location, which is an important part of the considerations of heritage. We would consider number 3, which is the eaves trough, relating to the eaves troughs, and number 4, which is the front porch, along with number 1, the setback, to all be considered as a circumstance of the existing placement of the house that we would like to build in line with the existing. Like we'd like to build in line with the existing here. I'd like to point out just quickly about the front porch and eaves troughs as well, that they will encroach less into the setback with the proposed than what is currently existing. The side yard setback for the existing conditions as well are common to be approved from the C of A. Most notably, which is submitted in our file as well under neighbor C of A decisions, number 2 Jean Street, which is right around the corner, has been approved for the existing conditions of 0.06, and a few doors north on the other side of the street, 325 Glen, has recently been approved for a point, like basically a 0 setback for the existing situation. Number 5, building depth. We have 17 meters is allowed. We have proposed 17.5 meters. If you look at the diagram labeled building depth, our building length is 16.97 meters, which is shorter than what is allowed. Should we have moved the house forward to the required front setback of 0.5 meters ahead? The reason for this variance, again, is as mentioned earlier, we are choosing to work with the existing conditions and would like to keep the home in its historic position. Number 6 is floor space index. We are requesting 85%, which we believe is a humble ask in Rosedale for a 2,880 square foot house for a family of 5. If you refer to the diagram density, we are not setting precedents. Several homes in the area have been approved. On our diagram, you'll see the green shows existing homes in the area reaching up to 119% FSI. And in red, we're showing C of A approvals for additions or new builds up to 95%. We also have a diagram referenced shell. And we have the shell of the front and side, basically they're not, they're elevations in the sense of the shell. We feel this is an important for the Committee of Adjustments and our neighbors to understand the effort made in respecting the variances. If we were to build new, disregard heritage aspects, and work from the max allowances, our front shows on this lot, we are proposing a smaller frontage than what is allowed in red. Note, we also have an area that is scratched out in blue to the side of it. This property in particular has a side yard, it's not this diagram, it's the one that's noted shell. Yes, right there. Thank you. So you also see the one scratched with the blue there. For a lot this size, if there was no easement on the side in this community, that would actually be the allowable size of the house. So what we're actually proposing is significantly smaller. When you look at the side yard setback, it shows we're also shorter than what is permitted and within the height. The point is we are building within a zoning compliant shell in which we are asking for extra floor space without asking for a larger footprint. And in the variances, the variances are a result of the current historic placement of the home. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions, panel? Okay, let's move on. Laura Thompson.
Hi, Ms. Thompson, if you can hear us, you're unmuted. Ms. Thompson, I'm going to give you a call on your 873 number.
Okay, so Cindy, would you get her? But I'm going to move on to the next speaker. Miss Dunlop.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, hello. Good morning. My name is Rafaela Dunlap, and I live at 300 Glen Road, right next to the proposed build. We have lived here for over 20 years, my husband and I and our 3 children, and it's our family home in a beautiful community. We have a lovely street with a lovely community, and so we understand that people want to move here and renovate. However, we strongly object and refuse all 7 of the proposed variances, as they will negatively impact our property in terms of safety, light, and privacy. Our biggest concern is the fire safety issue, because the 298 house is already really, really tight to our property line. So the depth variance is of major concern, because if a rear wall and 3-story addition is built from their existing house, it will be, I think, 6 inches from us. And so we ask that the 3-foot setback to code be enforced. Our house is stucco and wood, so we want to make sure that fire regulations are upheld, because if ever, God forbid, firefighters would need to come, they would never be able to access in between the houses, and we worry about, spread of fire from house to house. We think that the variances proposed are excessive and are not in line with the existing character of Glen Road. Altering the existing 2-story dwelling into a full large 3-story dwelling, given the small size of the lot it's on, would really negatively impact our property. We would lose privacy, and it would be really, really close to our home. And that 3rd floor addition and the westward extension would put an enormous shadow on our backyard green space and onto our children's garden. And in addition, the 3rd floor proposed addition would cast a big shadow on the deck off of our 2nd floor. So yes, this 2-year major project, we object to all of the 7 variances. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Pamela Harris, please.
Through you, Mr. Chair. They were on the call but may have dropped off. We're having trouble connecting with them.
Okay, what about Ms. Thompson?
Ms. Thompson, can you hear us? You're unmuted.
She not there?
No.
Okay.
Sorry.
Carol Dirks, I'm going to move on. If you can get a hold of those people, you'll let me know.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, Pamela Harris, I believe, is connected now.
Okay. Ms.
Hello?
Harris? Yes. Do we have your name and address, please?
Are you speaking to me on the phone?
Yes. Are you Pamela Harris?
I'm her husband. My name is McLeod, M-C-L-E-O-D.
Okay, you're at 292 Glen Road?
That's correct.
Okay. Can we have your concerns, please?
Well, there is an issue about parking. I find there are two statements about parking on the information submitted by the city. And if you'll hold on just a minute, I'll get that piece of paper.
Yeah, no.
Hold on, please.
Yeah, the parking's not going to change as I understand it.
Hello, here I am.
Yes?
On the number one, no, let's see, it's number two. It says that a provided parking space will be located on the front yard. However, in number 7, it says a minimum of 1 parking space is required, but no parking spaces will be provided. So I found that inconsistent and didn't understand it. In any case, parking is limited on the street.
As I understand it, Mr. McLeod, there will be no change in the parking, and the reason why there's 2 variances is only because the parking space partially on the city property does not count as a legal parking space under the bylaw, and it requires a license. But the parking is not changing. There will be no parking, no more parking on the street from this property.
You're saying there will be no more parking on the street?
Well, the parking space on the property will remain. So the situation with respect to parking with respect to this property is not changing.
Okay, so number 2 is what is going to be the case. And number 7 is irrelevant?
Well, it's not irrelevant to the bylaw, but there will be parking on the property, partially on the property, partially on city property.
You're saying that there will be property parking. Does that mean that an application has been approved?
No. If these variances are approved, the parking will remain as is.
And what is as is?
Well, as I understand it, there's a parking space located in the front yard, partially on the property and partially on city property, and which would require a license or a permit.
Yes, I believe that's the case.
Yes, it is.
Okay, there's another thing that I don't understand from the drawings, and it shows in the backyard 2 squared off areas. And out my back window I can see that there's only one structure, and it's in the southwest corner, and it is square. Whereas what's shown in the drawing is a rectangle, but it's not square. So I think that the
So would you you please speak up? I can't hear you.
Yes, I'm having trouble hearing you. I'm questioning the map, the site plan. In the backyard, there's a depiction of two structures, which are squared off with none of the dots inside. And I can look out my back window and see that there is only one structure there, and it's in the southwest corner, and it is rectangular.
Sir, those are sheds, but can you tell the committee what your concerns are with the proposal? That's what they want to hear from you right now. How will it affect you? What your feelings are about what they're proposing to do?
Well, it seems to me that there's a mixture of housing sizes on this block, and that's appropriate for people with different incomes. And turning it into a block that's just exclusively for large houses, wealthier people, I do object to that. It's been a neighborhood with mixed resources, and I value that aspect of the neighborhood. Also, if we have these laws about how far you can encroach towards the property line, they're there for a purpose. And building higher density, it just seems to me, why do we have these laws if we're going to be just ignoring them? I think the laws are appropriate.
All right, Mr. McLeod, your time is up. If you could just wrap up.
I think I've said what I wish to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Carol Dirks.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Carol Dirks has informed us via email that she does not intend to speak.
She doesn't want to speak? Okay. Chris Bulger.
Yes, thank you.
All right.
The committee for letting me speak. I live at 296 Glen Road, the neighbor to the south of the applicant, and my objections are very on the same lines as 300. We put a joint written submission together to outline the specifics, and I think I maybe would give a little bit more context around parking, because I think that's one of the confusions here. I mean, these owners came on as of October 1st and moved into the house, and there was 2 cars parking in the mutual drive, and had been that way for over 20 years, and we had made application together for the pad parking in front of 298. So there was in fact 3-car parking for 20 years here that is now being changed to only pad parking, and they have the legal right to do that, no question. I mean, there has to be 2 parties have to agree for for parking in a shared access drive, and so we understand that. But I just want to give you the sense of when you say it's status quo for parking. No, these new owners have effectively removed a wanted parking on the street, right? And their stated use for the house, expanding coverage, is for this is going to be a house for multi-generations, which says they're bringing more cars, more traffic onto the street without increasing parking. So here's a new house essentially being built using the guise of let's maintain the historical footprint and let's avoid the expense of putting underground parking that was required of the house across the street. Every new house in the city that's being built is required for underground parking in this circumstance, and they're trying to avoid this under the guise of historical footprint and getting rid of everything else, which I find not the appropriate thing to be considering here. And and certainly the broader density issues. I mean, I'm involved in sustainability and how we're all committed to driving towards a net zero carbon economy, and this flies against it, but that's not the mandate of the committee. I won't bore you with that. But I wanted to say, in addition, the privacy issues are aggravated in this particular sense. We there's been over the last 6 months 5 issues that have gone to council, ranging from criminal mischief to disturbing the peace. But the most recent was indecent exposure at the second story of the applicant at the backyard. And we have a pool in our backyard, and So we have very real issues about privacy. We have a complete invasion of privacy going on now with this new owner, in addition to what's going to happen when it goes up. So, I'm just putting the character of the applicant. I'm putting it, I'm just putting a question. Are they going to live up to everything that they say they're going to do? I question that. But anyway, so that's the background here is, it is of liability to the neighbors. There's lots of application, opposition to this. If this wasn't COVID and there was the variance application only went to a small handful of neighbors, and there's over 11 or 12, I don't know how many objections there are that have just come up very quickly without time to even talk to the street about this.
Mr. Bulger, you're going to run out of time, so please
okay, I'm
deal.
now finished with
We don't have any mandate to deal with exposure or anything else. We can only deal with the variances. So if you have objections to the variances aside from parking, please let us know what they are.
Okay, I have specific objection to variance number 6 for a 43% increase in carbon footprint in a time of a net zero reality. And I'm going to be very interested in what John Tory ends up doing in Glasgow this November around changing the mandate for a committee that that should be hopefully looking for positive impact, not minimizing negative impact. And I'm applauding the work you're doing. I'm just saying that our mandate, I think, hopefully will evolve. But anyway, so I'll leave there. I mean, that's my my stated objection. Thank you.
Okay. Court Conover.
Yep.
Okay.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to start with a quick question. First of all, the circular said it was going to be a 2-story rear addition, and I just saw a little edit mark that it's a 3-story condition. Can you please say which is right? And then if it is 3-story, has that been factored into the additional and already egregious coverage?
Well, it says it's a 3-story addition. The plans are were enclosed, so it is what you received.
Oh, so the numbers reflect that it actually is a 3-story addition rather than a 2-story addition that has been built further upon.
Well, sometimes it's the planning department's definition of whether it's 2 stories or 3 stories, sometimes because a basement, without changing the structure at all, a basement gets included. I'm not saying that's what happened here, but sometimes that's how it becomes a 3-story as opposed to a 2-story.
But the numbers are correct, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, good. My major concern is the 3 or 2-story addition. I have a pool in the backyard. The house is already set further back than almost every other house in the neighborhood. And I'm in the backyard, constantly in the pool, and it's just going too far back, and I feel I've lost the privacy. It's also not fitting into the neighborhood. I mean, this is a McMansion, and that's not the style of the street. If you want to build a 3rd floor, I got no problem with that. But moving back and imposing your building further on other people is more than I can accept.
Okay. Are those your comments, sir?
They are.
Yep. Panel, any questions? Okay. Thank you, sir. Varun Raj.
Through you, Mr. Chair, attempts were made to contact Varun Raj, but we're unable to reach him.
Okay, well, we'll move on. Gabriel Brody.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate being heard. I'm at 327 Glen. It's Gabriel Brody. I also have very big concerns about the scope of the 3-story building with the size of it compared to the rest of the buildings. But probably the biggest concern, and I'm sure it is for most of the people on the street, is we have a very short, limited length street, almost virtually a dead end. And the parking Now, I understand what you said earlier about the parking, but there's definitely contradictory information on here saying that, yes, the bylaw requires parking be provided within the building, and that is a variance being asked for. And then later on, it says no parking space will be provided, but from understanding what you're saying, it means that it's not on the lot, there is actually going to be a parking space. So this is a pretty serious concern. Why aren't you asking this building to provide parking space as all the other new construction buildings are? They're always asked to provide parking within the confines of the building. Also, from the looks of this, I'm going to assume that, or can you somehow make an arrangement that the parking would be in such a way as to allow the cars from 296 and 298 have unfettered access to the parking? Because my impression is, from the way this 298 is currently parking, they're doing everything they can to limit the parking ability of the house south of them. We have very, very limited spaces on our street. We all have lived here a long time. We understand the problem. We work with each other. And I'm having the feeling that this new owner really is going to run roughshod over everybody else. They're not particularly interested in working within the confines and neighborly behavior.
Yeah, sir, Mr. Brody,
Yes.
Please address the variances. We can't deal with conduct.
I understand. Then the variance is, will there still be 2 parking spots available at the end of this construction?
Well, I think we better let the applicant address that when we get back to him.
I understand. Then as long as they're willing to do a proper agreement to it, because I do not believe agreements are held to unless it is an actual full official agreement. Thank you.
All right. Any questions, panel? All right, thank you. Gordon Parker?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes, Carl, sorry.
If I understood, could we get the site plan up on the screen? If I understood the owner of 296 correctly, he was concerned that there's parking in the right-of-way, and I thought, and I stand to be corrected if I'm wrong, that he indicated he has parking on his property. I'm now confused as to what actually exists. On the site plan, there is a parking space that is partially on the applicant's property and partially on the street, and we've discussed that, and it's not considered a legal parking space, but it's the proposal is to retain that space. I believe that's correct. Then there's a right-of-way, and the right-of-way appears to go all the way back to the back property line, and the owner at 296 has a garage. So my question is the garage used? Is the right-of-way used? Because one of the other people questioned this shed in the backyard, and the shed appears to block access to the garage. And then lastly, does 296 have a garage parking space, and or do they have front yard parking? I'm not at all clear on what's provided at the present time, and therefore I don't understand the problem.
All right, so should we go back to Mr. Bulger to see if he can help us? If you're still on the line?
Yes, I'm here, still on the line.
Okay.
Thank you. So the confusion is that, yes, there is a right-of-way between the houses, between 298 and 296, that extends to the backyards of both. And in the backyard of 298 are sheds, and in the backyard of 296 is a swimming pool. And so that's the use of the right-of-way, is to get to the rear of both houses. And now historically, what has happened was 296 had parking in the combination of the city area and the immediate, sort of east part of the right-of-way facing the street, so it parked there, and there was a parking pad application made for licensed parking from the city at 298. So between that area, over the years, we'd squeeze 4 cars in there quite comfortably. Right? So now what's happened, if the new owners, they have chosen to discontinue 296's ability to park, and they now take their 1 car and they straddle essentially the property line, so no other car can fit or park there. And I know that you're not to enforce, your job is not to enforce parking, but I'm just saying this is what's going on is they're now 298 is using essentially the full front of their house, including the right of way, to park. And so that's what the debate is around parking on the street. They're saying what was 4 spots off the street are now seeing 1 spot that's being used in front of 298, and the rest of the cars are just parking wherever they can.
Is there a parking space as well in front of 296 parallel to
No, there is not. No, there is not.
So where did you get 4 cars? You got on the pad 1, on the right of way 2.
There's enough to bank 2 of them, so there's 2 big ones on 296, and then there was 2 a big and a small one in 298. You can see, all that square spot with all the dots. That's paving right now. The cars can park pretty close to the house, right? That's all. So there's enough room for 2 cars. They're not huge ones in front of 298, and there's enough room for 2 cars, in the right of way. And that's been this. That was the historical thing I said for years. And then, if there was, and let me just continue. And if there was a challenge with 298, then what they would do is they would just double park on the street, blocking their driveway, right? So they had 1 car in and 1 car blocking, so they could move on whenever they wanted. So that was the way the parking was accommodated over, I said, for the last 20 years.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, sir. Gordon Parker.
Hi, Mr. Parker.
Hello?
You're unmuted.
Yes, Mr. Parker?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thanks very much for including me in the hearing. I own 319 Glen Road, just up the street from the subject property. And my concerns generally relate to the variance for site coverage and the height of the property. The front elevation of the property also is not really in keeping with anything else on the street, and would appear to be of a design that doesn't really follow any of the guidelines that have been established by a lot of the community groups in North Rosedale. So generally, I'm against the granting of the variance on those fairly straightforward grounds.
Okay, essentially you're saying doesn't fit with the character of the street?
That's correct. The current house is a little 2-story brick house that blends in with a lot of the other 2-story and other brick houses on the street, and it does appear that they are using some brick on the dormer of this house, but it appears that it has a fairly large 3-story metal roof that will be facing the road, and a fair amount of glazing on the east elevation, and it also looks like it's got a lot of glazing also on the south elevation onto where the shared driveway component area as well, and just the whole overall scale of the property will be not in keeping with the other properties on the street as well.
Okay, thank you, sir. Panel, do you have any questions? Okay. Let's move on to Alicia Bell.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I apologize, I'm driving, so I hope my reception continues to be heard. Thank you for the time. I reside at 318 Glen Road. I have a issue with the fact that they will be overbuilding on the allotted property allotment. I think visually it will change the landscape of our street. I have a second floor deck, although I am a number of houses north of this house. The visual that will happen is there will be, because of this rear addition, a very large structure built, which will impede, I think, also not only the streetscape, but the backyard landscaping view. I do have issues with that because Glen Road, the houses on the west side, all typically have the same structural vantage point. So they all end at the same point. So what is very precious in our neighborhood is the trees, the landscaping, as drawn up by the city. And I feel that this large structure in the backyard at 298 Glen Road will impede that view as well.
Okay. Panel, any questions? All right, thank you. Tupper Foster and Mar Kelly.
Hi, my name is Mar Kelly, and I'm at 306 Glen Road.
Yes.
And we did actually submit something in writing, but it was late, unfortunately. Like the details of what I plan to say here are actually on the website. So thank you for allowing me to speak. The existing, so I'm commenting on variance number 6. The existing house on the lot, it's really about the excessive mass of the building and the extent, which is approximately 40 to 42% overbuilt, and represents an intrusive presence in the established fabric of the streetscape. The other question I have is that the plan shows that there are 2 outbuildings at the western end of the building lot, and I don't believe they're dimensioned or added to the additional ancillary gross floor area accounted for. So that might need to be looked into. So my strong recommended is that not be approved based on the size and dimensions of the building.
All right, panel, any questions? No? All right, thank you. Okay, Cindy, is there anybody else that wanted to speak that we haven't reached? Because Ms. Bulger, we only take one person from one address, and her husband, or presumably her husband, Mr. Bulger, has already spoken, in fact, spoken twice. So we won't be calling on her, but Laura Thompson, we didn't reach.
Yep.
Carol Dirks, well, I think you said she doesn't want to. So is Carol Thompson, or Laura Thompson around?
Hi, Laura Thompson. You're on the line and you're unmuted. Can you hear us? Through you, Mr. Chair, we're having trouble connecting with Laura Thompson.
Okay. Is there anyone else that we were supposed to hear from and we haven't? Varun Raj? Unable to reach him. Okay. All right. So it appears that we've spoken to all the opposition. So Mr. Ansearle, you have 5 minutes to respond.
Okay, thank you, sir. So I'd like to just touch briefly on number 300's comment about the side setback of 3 feet. The allowable setback is actually 18 inches, 0.45. We are 0.24, which is the existing circumstances. You know, that's where the house is positioned currently. She spoke about the shadow. We did see that in the note, but it was too late for us when that was mentioned to do something at a later time. But we did have within our studio, you know, we did do some test shadow studies too. There aren't the licensed ones. However, you know, what it did show that our impact would only be in January based on this house, and it would only cover their house slightly around their roof deck where there's an air conditioner and the pigeons gather. So we don't believe that this house is actually going to impact their house at all significantly in shadow effect. We are, we've heard a few people speak about the massing and, the look of it. We are keeping in character of the street, we believe, by staying in the same position. And we are proposing a Victorian. By doing the Victorian, that was, rather than going contemporary, we chose to go with Victorian to stay true to the streetscape and using quality, authentic materials to the area, which is also in line with what you have in Rosedale. And if you look at the streetscape, there's a substantial mash of, many different homes in the area, many of which are, more than half of them are actually 3-story, larger properties anyhow. Speaking to Mr. Bulger, 296, and, many people's concerns about parking, I don't really know what to say about the parking in 3 spots. There's never been 3 spots as far as we're concerned. There's 1 spot for us, 1 legal spot. That's where our owners be, and they have 1 car. So, where other people are talking about, larger families, larger cars, they're a 1-car family. Kids, that's, kids don't drive. That's just how it is, and I don't really know how to comment on that. If there's a personal agreement between neighbors for the past 28 years, that's neither myself, I can't comment on that personally, but that's not official. That has nothing to do with transportation or ourselves. Speaking on the carbon footprint, I just want to comment on this one here. This is, a little bit of a, I'm allowed to do it, but you're not allowed to do it. And by doing this new build, we're looking to reduce the carbon footprint. Part of my, half of my major in university was environmental studies. I focus a lot in sustainable building, actually, quite a bit in what we do. This house is old and cheap materials used. It's incredibly inefficient. Windows leak, doors leak, vapor barriers missing, inefficient heating and cooling. The house in its current state, over 25 years will be, the new house over 25 years will be much more energy efficient rather than performing, rather than just what's leaving there. And we will also be increasing the volume of the soft landscaping. Many people mentioned about structures in the back. Our plan is actually to remove the shed and multiple concrete pads in the back to create a full green area in the back. The neighbors, again, speaking on this, and I don't want to get into a he said, but again, it's about one of those things about, what's fair for me is not fair for you. It's, let's be fair to everybody. The neighbor to 296, Mr. Bulger, has a pool, a heated pool with no cover on, if he's speaking about carbon footprint in a much larger house. But he also talks about right of way. His parking situation is not our concern. What he's done in his right of way is built a bay window, put an awning that covers out from the bay window, and also in the rear of the house has greenery that's been planted 2 feet into the right of way, yet is saying you can't do nothing. And we are not actually proposing to do anything in the right of way. So basically, moving on, for FSI, we are requesting 85%. That's 25% what's over allowance. This is not precedence. If you recall the diagrams I showed earlier, we feel, again, for Rosedale, that 2,880 square feet is a humble ask. It will still be one of the smaller houses in the neighborhood, in the community. No planners object, and we have been mindful of working within the permitted shell allowed. And, so just to sum up, basically, the existing circumstances of where the house is positioned is, has resulted in the variance. It's our decision to keep the house on the footprint that historically has been put in place. We were mindful to not set precedents, and we worked within a shell that would be allowed if placed, if moved. Speaking on FSI, that shell, we hear a lot of people talking about massing. We are not above a height variance. Our massing is, again, under 17 meters. Our frontage is inches less than what would actually be permitted on that site.
Mr. Ansel, your time is up. Have you summed up now?
That was pretty much it.
Okay. Thank you. Panel, any questions? Yes, Nimrod?
Yeah, I have a question. If we can put up the site plan, please. My question is that the site plan shows a 3-story building, and then at the rear, it shows a new 2-story addition, and so I wasn't clear on that.
Yes, sir. That actually was a typo on the 2-story addition, because there's actually 1 story there. So the roof slopes back there, but in all the other plans it shows how it is a 3-story. That was just a typo there.
Okay, so
it's in the paperwork.
That becomes 3 stories. Right. So that new 2-story addition really it's a 3-story addition. So my question really is then, what are the impacts of extending that 3-story that far back to neighbors to the north and south?
So as mentioned, we don't feel that this is a very large impact. If you look at if we were doing a 2-story addition, within the guidelines, we would actually be allowed to move the house back slightly if we were doing 2 stories. On the 3rd floor, we've chose to slope the roof as per, many condos in the city step back and so on and so forth. But we chose to slope back the roof also not to get a height variance. So the impact, as mentioned, from our general, I don't believe there'll be any impacts the way that the sun travels on the neighbor to 296. It's too far away from the neighbors that, back onto the rear to have any effect on that. And to the neighbors at number 300, as I mentioned earlier, we did an in-house slight shadow study, but the way the sun travels, only in January will there be, with this sloped roof, will there really be much of an impact and really, much more of an increased impact on their rooftop, on their deck on the side. And that's where they have the air conditioner, and we don't imagine anybody sitting out there in January. So that would be, we don't look at this as being much of an impact, and it's not that much more of a, leave it at that.
Thank you.
Mr. Ansuro,
yes, sir.
I think at least one objector talked about the building not being in consistent with the character of the street. I saw when I did a street view some other houses with quite a bit of glass, etc. And so I wondered, is this a transition house, or is it consistent with the character of the houses on the street?
Well, in my opinion, if you look, again, we've installed a lot of pictures on this in the diagram of the streetscape, and the street's already been, there's many different houses that have been altered over time. 309, you can look at, they have a big white bay window out in front of it. They have, double dormers out. There's not really, these are homes that have been, they've just been altered over time and without thought. The house that we're doing, when we started with these clients, the original thought was to go contemporary, but after we considered it, we looked at the streetscape, we considered what we were going to do, we went with the Victorian form. I'm not trying to, we're not the cheapest studio in town, and the reality is that we're here, people pay for our services to get a good design, not to just get something that's slapped up. So our idea is, and the owners as well, we are going to be using heritage brick on there. Will it be a traditional rebuilt Victorian? No, but will it conform to Victorian and have Victorian elements to it? Yes. And we've done this once before in Cabbagetown on a level 3 heritage home, in which heritage, and we went actually much further than what we did here, but just heritage was very, they conformed to what they were very happy with what we were conforming to, and it went through. And this is a similar situation here, where the material, we believe will be, to answer your question, yes, we believe this will conform very well to what the Rosedale landscape calls for. As for the landscape of this street, we already feel that the majority of this landscape has, majority of the houses have been altered, and not to the most eye appealing, so to speak, or set to an era.
All right. So panel, do you have any further questions? so we'll take it into committee. We have comments? Jim?
Yeah, I just want to add my comments, and actually, most of the argument by the applicants, I have agreement to. I think the explanation is very clear, and they do have very mindful attempt to make it fit into neighborhood. And on the street, it's true. There's a collection of different styles and sizes. When I look at also the variances. For example, the depth they're asking for 0.5 meter longer, and in many applications we've seen in the neighborhood that the SSI is sometimes even higher than that. So I do not have any problem with the application, and I'm in support of it.
Peter?
I agree with Yim. I think that it's quite clear in the application that the designer has made an attempt to fit within what's allowed on the site. The variances being requested are very small, and there are many, many three-story houses to begin with. I honestly was taken aback with the level of opposition to this, given the existing structures in the neighborhood. I think this is a well-designed and sensitive application, and I'll support it.
Yeah, I agree. I was surprised by the vehemence of the opposition, because I, as a matter of fact, my note says transition house, because I looked at, as I said, I looked at the street view and saw other houses that had a lot of glass, etc., and I didn't think this was out of the way, and the variances requested aren't major. I think that these people got into trouble with some of their neighbors, apparently by the way they conducted themselves or anything, but that doesn't have anything to do with us, so I would support this application. So, Nimrod, do you have any comments? No? Carl?
I'm also going to support the application for very much the same reasons. I think the variances are minor. I think that the designer has gone to some lengths to try and have the building reflect context and to not create disadvantages for the neighbors. The only issue that I grappled a lot with was parking, and I don't see a problem with approving variance number 2, because if you didn't, that means that the parking has to be within the building. Well, if you put a parking space within this building, it's only going to get higher, it's only going to get bigger, it's only going to get more massive, which is the very issue that the community is concerned with. So I also have no trouble supporting this application.
Okay, so do we have a motion? Yim?
So I would like to move for approval, and I do not believe there are some conditions. If anyone remind me.
That's right.
I don't see any conditions.
Okay, I have a motion to move for approval with no conditions.
Thank you. Peter, you seconded? All right, all in favor? You have your approval, sir. Thank you. We need to...
members, we just need to switch to the next YouTube stream because we're approaching 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
So anyone who's watching, the next title to look for will be June 30th p.m. the first session, okay?
Are we taking a break now?
Yeah, maybe 5 minutes just to give us time to switch YouTube.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
We all need a break. Okay.